OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
Right, you're very welcome along to, what day of the week is it? It's Tuesday. Tuesday's OTB AM. It's Darran Eoin here with you. And we're live in glorious Technicolor across all of our streaming platforms today. Apologies about yesterday. Many of you were only able to listen to us on OTB SPORTS Radio, which is a good thing. You know, it introduces you to something that's shiny and new and available to you at all times. But the full podcast of today's show will be available by 10 AM as per usual. Eoin is back in harness. Eoin, how are you?
Amazing what happens when I'm not around. What did you try and even do yesterday?
Things fall apart, the centre cannot hold. It's interesting, Eoin. We were speculating in your absence yesterday about where you were. It seems as if the Dublin coming of the Kerry mafia had been summoned home. As we established during Classic Game Club last week, Dublin to Thurles is closer than Thurles to Tralee. So this notion that you were going home to Kerry because you were almost there, you were in Munster anyway, you were just popping home, that was clearly a cover story for the fact that the Dublin coming of the Kerry mafia have not been performing to their usual levels. Too many rumours, too many leaked WhatsApps over the course of the winter, and you guys have obviously had a bit of a kick-in. You were down somewhere beyond Ventry where there's no phone signal, I heard.
The closure of pubs really has been detrimental to our cause, to the Cummins cause. The kind of under the cover of darkness, after a few pints of Guinness, we tend to venture and I don't know, delete WhatsApp messages and kill rumours by any means necessary.
Is it a common or a coven? I haven't quite worked out yet so what's the appropriate term for a gathering of the Kerry mafia, the Dublin group.
Probably just like a splinter section actually is our technical term.
It's the second most interesting story today in GAA. We have East Coast versus West Coast. It's a biggie versus two-pack style row brewing between the good people of Wexford and the good people of Clare. This is mad. This just keeps getting better and better and better. And when the 30 for 30 comes to be written, they're going to start with the Russian hackers in St. Petersburg and how that led to the latest episode here of what's going on. Because clearly somebody in the HSE, because they couldn't use their computers this week, were a little bit bored and decided, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to watch the video of the Clare-Wexford game and see who these Wexford lads were close enough in close contact with. And then I'm going to get those players kicked off the Clare team for the weekend.
Yeah, it's like the Russian hackers are like sitting around their kind of like Soviet block table this morning, and they're like, what have you got? What sort of data have you got? And the other man beside him is like, well, Eivor Quilligan goes fierce long with his puck outs. And that's the conversation that they have. Because they've got all this great video footage, it seems. Video footage that the public isn't even privy to. That time when Jim Gavin wouldn't speak to RTE because they wouldn't give him video footage. The HSE have had no such trouble, it seems.
Is it extra video footage, really?
Well,
they've got access to the Google Drive.
Well, it just seems that way. How can you... So the context is, I didn't realise this, Colm Keys this morning saying that in some cases around the country, contact tracers have been known to watch reruns of games. They've been watching reruns of games to establish what level of contact there has been between rival players. You can't establish that by watching a game on regular television. You need the over-the-goal view, and you need to be able to watch things happening as they actually happen. So that's my take on it, that you can't possibly do that by just clicking record on TG Carr. You need to have a little bit more than that.
This is layers upon layers here, Eoin. I mean, you're blowing my mind. You're absolutely, of course, correct that there's no way that anybody could possibly make a judgment on the basis of watching the match in its entirety, because you know you don't have player cam.
No, they have a tactics board set up in HSE Midwest at the moment where there's X's and O's, and they've got like little lines drawn. They've got like Jamie Carragher sitting beside them. They're like, there. That's where they go into contact with one another for 5 minutes. And
then they pause it and they get the 3D view that you know they don't have. We can't see it because we're mere plebs who pay our licence fee, and we're not allowed access to that footage. But they obviously do. This row has like become the weirdest. And, you know, I hope everybody seems to be well, but quite bizarre outbreak. And is it the latest front in the long-running beef between Clare and Wexford? Is it connected to that? Is that why this has happened? Is there some other aspect of when you're updating your Davy versus Lohan mini-doc, will this episode feature? It has to now, right?
Like, it becomes bigger than Davy versus Lohan now. As you say, it becomes East Coast versus West Coast rather than just one individual versus another. So, it did reach an extraordinary level yesterday. Like the Brian Lohan interview on RTE was incredible. And you look at it in hindsight now, when you look at the Wexford chairman coming out and pretty hardly saying that is not true. Like, that is completely outrageous to suggest that we nominated 2 players. But when you look back at that Lohan interview and see how specific he was about a substitute coming on and nominating a Clare player, all these little details, everybody seems to have a lot of information at their disposal, and it's just hard to find out what the truth is. Like, if we kind of like look through it and kind of think about what this will actually sort of mean, the implication of a story like this could be bigger than just Clare versus Wexford. Maybe this is like a bit of a misunderstanding, and maybe the fact that there is kind of like a beef that exists there previously kind of adds a bit more spice to the story and we're paying a little bit more attention. Or maybe this is actually just a ramping up on clamping down on close/casual contacts on the part of the HSE, which would obviously have wider implications for the rest of this year's championship, because this will be far from the last incident if this is the case.
And that's a really interesting point from Colin Keys in his piece today. The Herald have detailed, they've spoken to Fergal McGill, who did say categorically that it would be the HSE who would decide who were close contacts. There's no nominating who your close contacts are. Now, it's possible that this is all caused by a bit of a misunderstanding from Brian Lohan's perspective. So Brian Lohan is going about his business, training his team, and all of a sudden they get a phone call, and the phone call says 2 of your lads are close contacts of players from Wexford who they played with last weekend. And they're like, well, how did you pick those 2? Well, because they were close contacts of the 2 players. It's like, yeah, but how did you come to that conclusion? I don't know if they had a conversation, or if that was teased out, but you would think that the only way that it could possibly happen was like, who are you marking is a question. Now, we're given to understand that question wasn't asked of the players, but you can see how in the gap of knowledge, into that vacuum pours speculation. And if you're trying to fill in the dots, it's like, well, how would they have identified those players? They must have asked the 2 lads who they were marking. So it must be those 2 lads who the 2 lads were marking, who are the, and all of a sudden you're filling in dots, and it's like, well, would they have named them? It's unlikely the HSE are looking at video, isn't it? That's new news. I mean, that is definitely new news. And like, if you get called and told that you're a close contact of somebody, you expect that person has named you to the HSE. And like, otherwise, how did the HSE know of your existence? Because the HSE don't have video footage of most of our jobs. I mean, so I don't know. It's a very weird scenario we find ourselves in here, where all of a sudden, I mean, whatever you say nothing is going to be the new code, is it? To stop games being called off in the future at club level if that happens?
Definitely a possible outcome. Did you read Anthony Daly yesterday in the Examiner? Like, I'm only kind of coming to it today, but like the fact that he was kind of like pointing to Wexford being gathered in a huddle around that game and saying like how Clare are the ones paying the price for what happened on the Wexford side of things is just kind of another element, a needle in this that kind of makes it a little bit bigger than just a specific COVID story, that there is a little bit of Wexford versus Clare tension that definitely exists there at this moment. Like, the interesting thing is, as we go through this summer, more and more people will be vaccinated, but a smaller percentage of those people will be players. Like, officials will be vaccinated, media will be vaccinated, managers will be vaccinated, and players will be the last ones to be vaccinated. So if these actually get more stringent, these measures, this puts the whole thing under risk. It's not like the whole country is getting better and then as a result the players are getting better. The players are going to be left behind and they will be one of the last ones to be vaccinated, and that's the right way to do it. Obviously they're young, fit men. They don't need to they're not as high important as some of the officials, you'd imagine, some of the media, as I say, and some of the management as well. So this is going to be, if this is the rules that the HSC want to play with over the next little while, that casual contacts can be nominated, if that's the case, or if casual contacts can be picked out while watching a video footage online, then we're in a spot of bother, I think.
Outdoors as
Outdoors is the other thing. Like,
so unless there's a piece of information we don't know.
Yeah, maybe.
Unless HSE knows something that we don't know in the midst of all this, which is the other possibility.
That's the thing, and I'd like to think that's the case, because if it's not the case, and like this probably goes without saying, but if the HSE are genuinely watching games back to try and find out close contacts, if they're actually going through with a stopwatch, they need to get a life. Simple as that. It is absolutely.
I mean, nothing else to do, no computers. It's like, I told you at the start, it's the Russian hackers' fault.
Yeah, it's like, oh gosh. Well, like I don't know about this at all. If this is the new sort of realities that we face this summer, that people are going to start being picked out because somebody in an office has watched them marking somebody who has tested positive for whatever 2-3 minutes in an outdoor setting. Jesus, like, I mean, this, we may as well just wrap it all up now. Give Dublin Sam Maguire, give Limerick Liam McCarthy, and just put a pin in it, because this will be a disaster if this is the sort of...
It's not gonna happen.
No, but as you say,
but sure, there's no sport in the world where we've seen this happen. There's been no outdoor field sport in the world where cases have been transmitted, according to all of the data that we've seen.
Correct. Like, and that's exactly it. But like, it's your point there. It's like there's probably more than meets the eye here, which is the reality. But if we are kind of like taking this and running with it, this idea that they are watching games, then it's a bleak picture for the summer.
On a scale of 1 to 10, moving on, how excited are you now, having seen Kerry in the flesh, finally a good quality game of football from your beloved team that you had to try and damp down the hype after they kicked 118 against the reigning All-Ireland champions, 7-time All-Ireland champions, 6-time All-Ireland champions? How excited are you? Yeah, very excited. Like, it's I just can't wait to see these two teams play in the championship again, and I really hope it's this summer. I really hope that, like, with all due respect to the upsets that we saw in the provincial championships last year. No, you don't have to respect them. You were on the end of one. You don't have to respect it. The best scenario for everybody this summer would be to see Kerry come out of Munster, to see, well, I mean, there's 4 Division 1 teams in Ulster, and to see Mayo come out of Connacht. And we have a proper semi-finals match-up, because I think there will be some brilliant games in that setup as well, and then a proper meaningful All-Ireland final where Dublin are put under pressure, because they can be put under pressure. It's just it's so strange to see Dublin surrender a 7-point lead. It just does not happen, and this is like a piece of abstract art, the game on Sunday. Everybody's looking at it in a completely different way. It's got a certain amount of meaning for Dublin people, who feel that McGalvin will be the happier man coming away from Semple Stadium. And then Kerry people will look at it a different way, saying that Peter Keane will be the happier man coming away from Semple Stadium. That is like the nugget, that is the winning of Sunday, if your manager is happier of the two coming away from the game. And there is a school of thought out there that Dublin have a bigger improvement yet to come. But I would say that we have spoken so much about Dublin over the past couple of years, and their squad depth being like at an all-time level, that we've never seen squad depth quite like Dublin. If you use that logic, then that has to maintain when you talk about how much of an improvement they can get when their players come back. Yeah. If their bench is that good, then the players that come back won't actually make that much of, won't make a sea change to that Dublin performance. They'll get better for sure. But the starting team wasn't that far away from a team that you could see starting in, with the exception of the goalkeeper. And like, who knows, this year might be the year. Goalkeeper and Dean Rock. And that's it. And does Dean Rock automatically get in the team? And is he fully fit? Is his fitness at the level that it would be, that it has been in previous years? Maybe it is. Maybe he comes back and he's absolutely at the level that he has always been, or at his best level. That's possible, but maybe not, you know? Sorry to interrupt on Dean Rock. The thing we're overlooking with Dean Rock is, like, who does he actually come in for? Like, Paddy Small kicked 3 points from play on Sunday. I thought he was excellent. Cormac Costello has been lethal for the first 2 weeks. One of those two players probably drops out if Dean Rock comes in. So Dean Rock then needs to play outstanding to actually make this step up that Dublin fans are expecting. Like, there is every chance that Dean Rock is just as good as them, and they're still absolutely class. But this net gain that people are expecting from Dublin to come back, I'm not sure that happens in certain areas. Now, there are a couple of moments when Dean Rock could have taken the ball on the 45-metre line after a bit of Kerry fouling and said straight to the post, almost like rugby out-half style, go for the post, whereas Fenton would get the ball, play it 10 yards, and they would invariably work a score, so they would still get their score anyway. But I just think 45 metres out, if an opponent fouls you, Dean Rock is just invaluable there. Right, he's excited. That's the first time that we've heard this properly. The hype train. How could you not be after watching that? Like, I'm sure every football fan is excited after seeing that, and watching the games from Ulster that we've seen over the first couple of weeks, seeing Mayo side through Division 2, even though they've had a few speed bumps. Like, the championship, like, I know Dublin may get their act together in a more comprehensive fashion over the next couple of weeks and kill all our hopes and dreams, but it's impossible to not be excited by football at the moment. All right, OTB AM is live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, give me the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Aside from the Wexford thing, you should probably do a piece on the shambles that is the Clare County Board at the moment, says Will on YouTube. Not feeding their under 20 players in County Board meeting the other night was a joke. So, last night at the Clare County Board meeting, Treasurer Michael Gallagher launched an extraordinary tirade against Niall O'Connor, the son of the former manager Jerry O'Connor, used to be involved in the backroom team of the senior hurlers. A query was raised at the County Board meeting in relation to recent reports that no post-training food was being made available to the Clare under-20 hurlers. The Treasurer outlined that this practice of feeding the under-20 hurlers would commence 3 weeks before their championship outing, later this summer. Michael Gallagher then thanked Niall O'Connor for raising $4,000 for the provision of food for the under-20 panels, but then queried if the motivation behind it was for the good of the squad or to embarrass Clare GAA. Imagine that. Imagine tearing into somebody who's actually gone and raised money to fund food for players who are trying to represent their county. That's crazy. A number of clubs called on the Treasurer to retract the comments, with Aero delegate Rory Hickey telling delegates the current 5-year strategic review group working toward the future of Clare GAA was the brainchild of his clubmate. Vice Chair of the board, Kieran Keating, was among those who also asked the Treasurer to retract the marks. A final call on the Treasurer to withdraw the remark was made just before the meeting closed, with Chairman Jack Chaplin stating the answer from Mr Gallagher was no. So there is war on two fronts. There is East Coast versus West Coast, and then there is internal beef in Clare at the moment, and it's fair to say that dirty laundry is definitely being washed in public. Here's what's coming up on the rest of the show between now and 10 a.m. this morning. We'd love to hear from you, by the way. 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number, or of course you can get us at Off the Ball on Twitter. We're going to talk to the winner of the Fantasy Premier League. He's an Irishman. He won it in the last day by making Sadio Mane his captain. We're going to bring you through the Euros Belgium and the cheat sheet for the Euros on Russia to see how good those teams are going to be. Graham Hunter is going to talk to us about Villareal against Manchester United, how Villareal might win this game, whether or not they're as good as the last Villareal team, and also about how Atleti ended up winning the title. We've got golf with JD. We've got Enda McGinley, the Antrim manager, former Tyrone footballer, of course, who's had a very successful start, 2 wins from 2. More Gaelic football at 9:10, and Ronan O'Gara from the aftermath of the game at the weekend where La Rochelle were beaten. So, Owen's 90-second roundup. This is our Euros cheat sheet. We've done Group A. It's time for Group B. Yeah, so what we do here is we give ourselves a 90-second timer to give you your bluffer's guide to every single team, and then we'll get stuck into a few main questions. So we're going to start this morning with Belgium, the third team in Group B. Let's get our 90-second timer there. So the number 1 team in the world were the most impressive team in qualifying. They had a 100% record across 10 games, scoring 40 goals and conceding just 3. At the last Euros, they lost in the quarterfinals because Hal Robson-Kanu is the GOAT, but they made it to the semi-finals at the 2018 World Cup where they lost to France. Now, Roberto Martinez, still the manager, he is still playing the same system, and he is still playing most of the same players. Let's take a look at the team that started against England in the third place playoff in 2018. There is a world in which Belgium make just 2 changes to that team for their Euros opener this summer. Vincent Kompany has retired. Nasser Chadli has dropped a place or 2 down the pecking order. And one of the big question marks, though, around that team may actually surround Eden Hazard, who has had quite the season with Real Madrid. He got a knock in September, a muscle injury in October, COVID in November, a muscle injury in December, a muscle injury in February, a muscle injury in March, and a knock in May. He has failed to complete 90 minutes on a single occasion this season, and a collection of strange middle-aged men known as El Chiringuito have a warrant out for his arrest. There will also be questions asked of an ageing defence, with Alderweireld and Vertonghen set to start. But in better news, Romelu Lukaku has scored 30 goals for Inter this season, but Manchester United fans will undoubtedly scapegoat him for any Belgian failings that may occur this summer. Finally, let's have a look at the kit. Here's the home jersey. I feel it is my responsibility as a fashionista to say, wow, look at that yellow trim. And let's have a look at the away jersey. Wow, look at that red trim. Those jerseys sure are something, aren't they, Ger? No, those jerseys are terrible. The classic Belgian jersey was amazing. They've got so much good material to work with, and they've managed somehow. The away jersey looks like it's a kid's jersey that's been through the wash about 15 times and the dirt's not coming off it.
Yeah, it's been getting mixed reaction, that home jersey, those patterns as if somebody's driven over the home jersey a little bit.
So the form line is really good.
Yeah, so then after that qualification campaign that I mentioned, just to kind of look at more of the recent form, in the Nations League, they won all of their games bar 1. They lost to England, which you'll remember last October, in a sign that football is coming home. They failed to beat the Czech Republic in World Cup qualifying in March as well, which was a bit of a shock, but they did beat Wales and hammer Belarus 8-0 in that same campaign. So those Czech Republic results, the England results, may be a sign that there is a slight weakness starting to develop, and in their last 11 matches, Belgium have fallen behind 5 times. Clutching at straws here, but maybe a few signs there that Belgium are on the downslope after being at number 1 for quite some time.
Players to watch.
Yeah, so this is going to be in a 3-4-2-1 system. Martinez continuing to play this. Alex Witsel is missing at the moment from midfield. He's been out since January after rupturing his Achilles tendon, so there's a big question mark about whether or not he plays. If he doesn't play, Leander Dendoncker of Wolves will probably come in and play beside Yuri Tielemans. When it comes to the Eden Hazard replacement, Dries Mertens is a likely candidate. 9 goals, 8 assists in Serie A for Napoli this season. You look at the rest of their forward line in their squad. Who else could come in for Hazard? Well, their forwards mostly are made up by Benteke and Batshuayi, not necessarily like-for-like replacements for Hazard. So if Hazard is missing, we might see the arrival of Jeremy Doku on the international scene this summer. He was born the same week Roy Keane was sent home from Saipan. He joined Rennes from Anderlecht at the start of this season, and no one has completed more dribbles than him in the French league this season. He is unbelievably quick. Liverpool tried to sign him when he was 15, but Romelu Lukaku told him to stay put at Anderlecht, and he grew under Vincent Kompany, and as I say, has been amazing in the French league this season. We'll probably only see him come on as a sub here and there, but as I say, if Hazard is out and misses the tournament, we might see more meaningful minutes. The wing-backs, the wide midfielders are always an important part of this Belgian system. I'd love to see Timothy Castagne get a bit more game time in the system. There is a school of thought that he's been so good for Leicester, how could you leave him out? But Thorgan Hazard on the left and Meunier on the right, the Dortmund duo, are probably the front runners, with Carrasco even in that mix as well. So they've got unbelievable depth there. And then finally, on the defence, if you're looking for an issue, the defence is the issue you can easily find. They've got Vertonghen, who's 34, Alderweireld, who's 32, and Vermaelen, who's 35. They're all in the squad. 2 of that 3 are going to start. It's going to be Vertonghen and Alderweireld. And in the middle of that back 3, it's going to be Jason Denayer, who's been really good with Lyon. There is this idea that he's just there to up the average pace in that back 3, but he's actually a really good defender as well. And in fairness, the 3 of them are playing in front of Thibaut Courtois. So how wrong can things go?
I was going to say, because the picture that we showed earlier on did not have Thibaut Courtois in goals, and that was a bit of an issue.
No, it's Courtois. Courtois is the man there. He's
Did he miss the World Cup? So it was Mignolet. Maybe that's just for the third, fourth place playoff, was it?
Yeah, Mignolet. Just okay. Well, that wasn't from the third, fourth place playoff. That was more a more recent game when Mignolet was playing. Okay. That was probably a bit of a red flag in fairness, but no, Courtois.
You'd be concerned. Like, the drop off is obviously huge from first to second. So give me your prediction, quick.
I'm going to say Belgium are going to win this.
Whole thing?
Yeah. The only thing, though, is they've got a very, very tough draw. So I think they'll top the group, but they would actually be better off not topping the group, because if they top the group, it's Germany, then it's Italy, then it's France, and then they play the final if they get there. But a slight concern about that defence for sure, but I think...
So if they finish second, what happens in the group? It's an easier draw than that.
Yeah, so they move on to the side without all of those teams now.
Okay, we'll do that. That's like, I mean, come on, Martinez, win your first game, draw your second, draw your third, and away you go. Yeah,
like the side with the Netherlands is obviously an easier side now. In fairness, Portugal and England are on that side, but they'll probably end up playing one another.
In Dublin.
My little prediction here. In Dublin. So they should take each other out. So the other side is
we'll all
easier.
be vaccinated by then. We could totally have had that game.
Yeah. We really could have, but the pesky Russians stole our game from us. Is that in St. Petersburg, or is that one of them went to Russia? I can't remember which one.
Gurpreet Dhaliwal on YouTube says, I love it, those name pronunciations. This is after your Group A chat, particularly around Turkey. You butchered most of them, lol. You should commentate on the Turkey games, would be hilarious.
All right, thanks, man.
And then Bird's Back Garden on YouTube says, big teams has a history of doing badly in the Euros. Don't get surprised that Switzerland and Kimru gets first and second in this group. I'd never learned the correct Welsh pronunciation of the name Wales, but I often wondered, is it like when Peter Shilton says era, and you're kind of you shrivel up inside a little bit and you feel a bit sick? Is that how Welsh people feel when we say the name of the Wales country, or do they like, yeah, okay, that's fair enough, you can do that because you're not a colonising force like Peter Shilton? Is that what happens?
Well, I would say you probably had the freedom to say whatever you wanted until a couple of months ago, when you've got the hawkish eyes of Wales upon you every single morning.
Well, I say hello to my Kimru brethren. Dave Gillette. Sean Kinsel on YouTube says, I backed Turkey a few months ago at 80-1. No idea who was backing Holland at any stage. They have 0 decent attacking players. And then Gurpreet responded, Turkey's first 11 can beat anybody, but once they lose a couple of players, they turn from a great team into an average team. It's worth pointing out that it was only in the 90s that Turkish football became professional, meaning people played part-time, worked day jobs, and then played in the evenings. So Turkish football only started going professional 30 years ago. Well, I mean, I remember when we used to beat Turkey routinely 5-0 with a John Byrne hat-trick, and well, it's fair to say things have changed. Professionalism is good for your local leagues in particular. 7:54 this morning, and it is time for me to tell you about what's happening on Thursday evening. That is this Thursday. This is your warning to go and get tickets for a very special remote road show It's Thursday night on OTB with Pepsi. Nathan's going to be joined in the night by Manchester City and Chelsea legend Sean Wright-Phillips, Man United hero Teddy Sheringham, Republic of Ireland star Denise O'Sullivan. It's a very special remote roadshow on Thursday the 27th of May. It happens at 5:30. So it kicks off at 5:30 sharp. Be sure to log in well in advance to avoid missing out on this great show. Tickets are free, but you have to register to join this exclusive and live remote roadshow on Thursday the 27th of May 2021. So you can watch this and it'll be over in plenty of time for the Europa League final. Check out otbsports.com/events and you can register there in association with Pepsi Max. Now, time for us to welcome the winner of the entire Fantasy Premier League competition. Is it Michael Teddy Bear? Is that your official name, Michael? Good morning to you. How are you?
Morning, how's things? No, the Teddy Bear's lost, just Michael Coon.
And come here, where did the Teddy Bear's name come from?
It was just a very simple name. It's hard to come up with a name off the spot, but I got a bit of advice that there's a bit of gamesmanship when you get up near high in the game, that people kind of people might report an offensive team name. So I said I'd go for the most passive team name I could think of. I didn't think it would get this exposure, but it has got it.
All right.
Because that happened last year, didn't it? The winner got disqualified for an offensive team name.
What?
Exactly. So I just thought I'd avoid that completely. So I went for the most passive name I could think of, but not thinking that it would get headlines.
Okay, that's interesting. You obviously had ambitions of being the winner outright.
Yeah, no, well, like it was more. You can change your team name as you go along. So when I was getting close to top of Ireland, I changed it to that passive name, just to avoid it.
What I can't get over this season, Michael, I'm not sure does this generally happen, but like you've been in the top 25 for like 20 weeks. Like the peaks and troughs of a Premier League season are represented in fantasy generally. I would assume that there is a sense of a bolter about the winner in most years, or at least they don't spend 25 or 20 consecutive weeks in the top 25. So this was quite an early burst from you.
Yeah, I did notice. You would notice being in the top 10, you kind of get familiar with the teams around you, and near the end, you could see quite a few that I hadn't seen before. So so they obviously came from behind. It's a lot of strategy. So like you use these kind of chips, these kind of cards that you can play. It gets you a lot of points in a game week, and I used a lot of mine a bit earlier, which got me in the like. So I kind of come up with the like, should I go into a lead early and try and hold on to it, or try and come from behind? But thankfully, it worked the way I did it.
Did your strategy change this season? Like, what was the different element for you? Because, like, again, people will be going through your previous season history and seeing it's incredible how much. I think 75,000 in the world was your best finish 10 years ago, and then this year all of a sudden this burst to the top. So what was different?
The start is definitely the most important part of it. So the teams I picked, a lot of the time in the past you would have picked a squad, and a lot of the cheap players that you picked, that you kind of guessed that hopefully they'll start and keep their place in the team. A lot of the time that didn't work out. But this year, the cheap players that I put on initially, like your James Justins of Leicester and a few people like that, they kept their place for quite a long time. And once they start, everyone starts buying them then, and then your team value goes up. And once your team value goes up, you start being able to buy. Your squad gets better and your team gets better. So the start is just so critical. And then obviously when I did have a good start, I put a lot more time and focus into it, and put a lot more thinking into my transfers as times went on. But in the past, maybe when I was not winning it or not close to anything, I just kind of gave up and didn't put in the same level of effort into it. It's
an incredible season to win it, Michael, because genuinely being like a casual player, this has been the most competitive season ever, because everybody has just been sitting at home for the first half of the season. There's been over 8 million players for the first time ever. Everybody's taking this thing so seriously. So to come out number one this year is like the most impressive season to do it.
Yeah, I was thrilled. Like, yeah, that's reflective in that. Like, I think I got the highest total score ever. Right. And I think maybe the top 4 or 5 also passed the previous highest score ever. So like, the standard is really high. And then the level of, I suppose, changes or complexities that happen with games getting cancelled and everything with COVID, and the amount of like what they call double game weeks and single game weeks and blank game weeks kind of was way higher than ever before. So the amount of planning that you had to go into that was more than in previous seasons.
Sadio Mane, captain on the final day, was that indicative of a strategy going down the home stretch of these Maverick picks?
Yeah, well, it was I kind of played it safe most of the year, but I kind of going into Wednesday, the midweek fixtures, I was kind of thinking I was in a great position to get into a lead, and everything went wrong for me on Wednesday, and I ended up being third, and I had a 9-point and an 8-point deficit off first and second.
What happened on Wednesday? What went wrong?
So I had a great squad. I thought I had players more to play than the other guys that were ahead of me. I had like Salah as captain that day. I had Mane, which no one had. I had quite a few players playing that day, but just none of them scored. And the guy that was against me had Willock, who's on the form of his life, and he got a goal Wednesday, and he got man of the match in the game. And he had Lucas Dina, the Everton defender, who got a clean sheet, and he got very high bonus points as well. So I just thought, comparing my Salah and Mane to Willock and Dina, that I'd come out on top on that battle, but it turned out I lost badly that day, which surprised me. So that caused me to change my strategy. So looking at the two teams ahead of me, like as I kind of said in previous interviews, like when you get up that high, everybody has similar teams when you get that high, because they've all picked the players that are on form. So I had to make kind of differential in my team to I suppose, to catch up and pass out the teams ahead of me. So that's where the Sadio Mane pick came. Particularly team number 2, his team was very, very similar to me, and the obvious pick was Salah. Like, he was going for golden boot, and he was on probably better form. But watching that Wednesday game, Mane he had a few chances, and I thought maybe if he actually put them away at the weekend and Sunday, it would be the only chance to give me to win it. And sure enough, it worked out.
Yeah, because I think Mane's been tipped as a differential all season long. Is like, he'll come good now. There will be a weekend when he scores. So, like, I mean, your timing was impeccable. The other thing, as you say, the differentials are so important. It essentially becomes a game of 4 or 5 players down the home stretch when everybody's got the same 6 or 7 players. Ederson saving that penalty on Sunday. Were you watching that game live? Because that turned out to be as key for your team as Sadio Mane's haul.
No, so the strategy, I was watching the Liverpool game, just hoping Salah wouldn't score and hoping for Mane, but I had a lot of alerts coming into my phone of every kind of thing that would happen. So the alert came straight away that he saved the penalty, which is big for me. It kind of paid back a lot of pain that he caused me, because I got him in 3 weeks before the end of the season for a -4 point hit. So he cost me money, and that was the day that, like, 10 minutes or 20 minutes after I made the decision, I found out that he wasn't starting. So Patterson was playing his first game for 11 years. So that was miserable. And then the next game he played, they let in 3 goals against Brighton. So he only got me, I think, 1 or 2 points. So I was pretty regretting that decision, but he came good for me in the end.
Incredible. Can I ask what informs your strategy, Michael? Is there certain reading you do? Is there certain statistics you rely on mostly? Is there anything you can put your finger on as to why you had such a good outcome on so many weeks this year? It's
fixture strategy and that double game week, blank game week strategy. It's just to, I suppose, you have to look far ahead, and you have to see when a team will have a good run of easier fixtures, and then you have to manage your team. So you'd be thinking weeks out that I'm going to have 2 million in my bank to be able to buy that player I want for that particular week. So you have to really manage that. And then for the double game weeks, you try and maximize the amount of players in your team that's going to play twice that week, and still have a relatively good team for the times when the teams aren't playing. So it was all about managing the chips, the cards you can play, to get around all that. I think that's the key to get ahead. Like, people just kind of probably float along and go, I want all these players because they're going to be brilliant this week, and they end up paying loads of 4-point hits to get players in. But it's the looking at the fixtures and getting your team right for the run. I think that's the key to do better, like, at the game.
What do you win?
So the prize is a 7-day trip to the UK, and you get 2 VIP experiences at a match of your choice. And then there's goodies, like, I think there's smartwatches and laptops and a few more managerial kind of jokier kind of prizes. But the main prize is that 7-day trip to the UK. Yeah.
As soon as you get the vaccine, away you go. Who do you support?
Liverpool, yeah. So Liverpool is my team. So kind of a bit of a hard decision with Mane as well. So I got to shout for him for 2 reasons.
And when the penalty save was made, or when Mane scored, are you up running around the living room screaming?
So I was here in my apartment. I'd say they were wondering what's going on, because I suppose a lot of the end of the year there's not a lot of excitement in the games, because I suppose the league is over and a lot like relegation was already set and things like that. So I've never been as excited at the end of a season for every single game, even games that meant nothing. But yeah, I was particularly the second goal for Mane, I was uproaring, and the way it ended, the way the whole game ended was just incredible, because I was coming into the last 5 minutes of all the fixtures, and I was tracking to be only 1 point. I was going to lose it by 1 point, so I was kind of on edge like. And Stuart Dallas for Leeds, he was getting a clean sheet, and it was looking like the game was saying he was going to get probably 2 bonus points, which would have meant I lost by a point. And then Robson Kanu for West Brom scored in the very dying minutes of that game and lost that second his clean sheet and his bonus points. So that's actually what won it for me in the end.
Robson Kanu.
Oh man, that's class.
You should see that goal. Like, it was a really bad defender error. Like, so it was. I think the stars were aligned for me that day. Like with the penalty save and which Mane going well and all that kind of thing. But I kind of felt the few weeks leading up to it, a lot of the players around me were getting that look. Like the Aguero penalty, a lot of the players around me had Mendy in goals, and they got a lot of points for that penalty save, even more so than Ederson, because they got bonus 3 that day. So I was kind of I was battling luck for. You were due it.
You were due it.
I felt I was due it, but in fairness, it all came in for me on the final day at the perfect time, really.
And how do you go back to normal life now, where this is not every single second of your waking living day?
It was a great distraction. I must say it was a great distraction, because I suppose with COVID, a lot of the other, I suppose, outlets or social outlets were removed. So it was great. So yeah, I will miss it, but at least there's always Euros on the horizon. I probably will avoid the fantasy league in Euros just because I probably need a break from the stress of it. But just sit back and I'll watch a bit of the games, and hopefully now COVID restrictions will be relaxing a small bit, and we'll be able to get out and do a bit more, maybe play 5-a-side again or do something like that.
One last question for me: what was the name of your team that you were concerned might get you disqualified? Are you allowed to say it?
My surname is a bit controversial. Coon is considered is not considered great at times, so I think it was called Counter Attack or something. I always put a team name with my surname in it, so it was just to avoid any implications to my surname.
Well, that's fair enough.
Where are you from, Michael? I've got to ask. Like, I mean, what county claim to you?
Yeah, Galway. So I'm from Galway, but I live and work in Dublin. But I grew up I was in Meath going to school, and then both parents are from Galway, so they moved the family home back to Galway. So in Portumna, and but I'm living up and working in Dublin at the moment.
Well, listen, congratulations, and long may your success continue. Enjoy that trip to whatever 2 games. I presume you're going to pick 2 Liverpool games.
I presume so, yeah.
Well, enjoy that, Michael. Good stuff. Thanks a million. Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks a million. Thanks for having me on. Thank you.
No worries. Cheers. You're big into your fantasy Premier League, and you appreciate the effort that went into it.
Oh yeah, like, I mean, I'm well past my peak when I used to absolutely be a nerd over it all. But as I said, that's what the point from there. Everybody was paying some sort of attention at some point this season, and we all went through periods of digging deep into it. So to win this season is absolutely extraordinary, and more players than ever as well. I've
told this story many times, but it's another opportunity for me to do so. When he was on the sports desk at Today FM, Nathan would phone up on Thursday or Friday the various press officers and say, "Oh, I'm just reporting on the Premier League game that we have live on Today FM on Saturday afternoon. Can you give me any extra information about the fitness of the following players?" And he would base his fantasy team selections on the basis of the information that he got. He was top 20 at one point.
He was, literally just going back through his history now. Nathan Murphy finished 190th in the world in 2007, 2008. But sure, there was probably 191 players playing it back then. That's the effort. I mean, obviously Nathan Murphy just watches real football now, doesn't he? And he doesn't play fantasy football. But he plays it really badly. His finish was 635,000 in the world this season.
Where'd you finish?
It was bad enough, 200,000.
400,000 ahead of Nathan.
Yeah,
Right.
Maybe there was a bit of a subtext to the whole fantasy football comment last week. I don't know.
Beef is real.
Who's to speculate? Yeah, the beef is real. West versus East.
8 minutes past 8 this morning. We'll bring you some more Biggie 2-pack a little bit later on if you want it. You can get us at Off The Ball on Twitter, or of course you can get us on 0879 180 180. Pack show still to come. John Duggan's going to talk to us about golf. We're going to hear from the Antrim boss, Enda McGinley. We're talking football with Graham Hunter. We're back after these with Tuesday Sports Pages.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Have you subscribed to the OTB Rugby podcasts? If not, here's some of what you've missed in the last week. since he has been suspended, I've had some interesting messages. My mum hasn't come out great from it. It's been interesting to say the least.
He would give it to you, and he gave it to me several times, and I was running around after him trying to kill him for the rest of the session.
Subscribe now to the OTB Rugby podcast stream wherever you get your podcasts, or get the entire OTB catalogue on the OTB Sports app.
At Online Tradesmen, we've never been busier. And if you're a trade professional, there's never been a better time to join us. Access over €17 million worth of jobs nationwide every month, along with e-learning and other supports. Need a website for your business? It's included in your membership. And on average, Online Tradesmen members get up to 10 times their fee back in new sales, marketing tools and savings. Apply today at onlinetradesmen.ie. Online Tradesmen, the home of qualified trade professionals.
Sean, what's that thing going round the garden?
That is our new Husqvarna auto mower.
Auto mower?
Yeah, it's a robotic lawnmower from Husqvarna. Cuts the grass automatically, has GPS tracking and an app. Even works in the rain. I just thought, why spend time cutting grass when I could spend it with the family?
Great! You can put the dinner on, so...
No can do, love. Have to paint the man cave.
Husqvarna auto mower. Never mow again. Learn more at husqvarna.ie.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
8:10 this morning, I'm going to run you through the sports pages. We can start with otbsports.com. Ronald O'Gara lost the plot with Will Skelton over fitness issues. It obviously worked. Skelton lost a lot of weight and was one of the best players in Europe. Liverpool poised to complete £35 million capture of Leipzig defender Konate. Stephen Kenny aims dig at predecessor squad management. New York Mets star left with nasal fractures after a 94-mile-an-hour ball to face. Pretty grim stuff in the NHL. I don't know if you saw this. There was a superstar captain of the Maple Leafs, I think, was knocked out. What looked like a complete accident. So he gets spun around, and then one of the opponents, as he falls, one of the opponents jumps to try and get out of his way and knocks him out with his knee/shin. And the scene is really, so the referees go over to try and pick him up, but he kind of falls over and collapses, and it looks like he's completely out, and then he's on the ice for about 10 minutes. But immediately the opposition called the guy out who knocked him out and beat the head off him. It's just like, I thought they'd stopped doing that. I thought that those fist fights had stopped. The guy who had accidentally cracked the skull, or it ended up not being a cracked skull, but it looked like it could have been, his helmet came off straight away and he takes lots of punches to the head. You're like, how is this a sport? How do they allow this to happen?
And the referees just kind of like, tentatively like being safe out there.
Eventually, they went in to break it up because your man's helmet had come off, by which point several punches had been landed. And you're like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, it's clearly going to concuss. I don't know. It just didn't make any sense to me. It was grim. It was absolutely grim, I thought.
What a sport.
I don't know. The rest of the papers today, the rest of the sports pages today are all about Manchester United going to Gdansk. Some bad puns and headlines on that. And also Clare's close contacts being identified by the HSE and not Wexford is a good story from Conor McKeown. He's spoken to the GA's Director of Club Games and Player Welfare, Fergal McGill. The one thing that stuck out to me today, so Max Mosley has died. He was the former chair of the FIA, which is the Fédération Internationale Automobile, whichever language that's in, and he was involved in a scandal in the late 90s, or was it the early 2000s? If Mosley had been known only for his Formula One career, his sexual antics might have been viewed as foolish and, depending on taste, depraved. But Mosley's name carried a disturbing resonance. His father was Sir Oswald Mosley, the British fascist leader. Indeed, Max was Sir Oswald's favourite son. A line you do not expect to read in the Telegraph every day. Nor was it any old orgy. The occasion, which took place in a seedy basement flat in Chelsea, appeared to involve a parody of tortures in a Nazi concentration camp. Mosley was alleged to have played the part of a camp commandant, whipping the girls with a leather strap while counting each stroke in German. You can picture the scene. Two of the prostitutes were dressed in striped pyjamas, said to be similar to the uniform of camp inmates, while others, allegedly in Nazi leather garb and jackboots, looked on. After the story broke, Mosley began legal action against the News of the World for invading his privacy and wrote a letter of apology to motoring organisations represented in the FAI. He won election and he managed to stay on. He had been speaking German, he said later, because some of the girls appeared to be German speakers, and in his memoir he claimed that one of the ladies liked to be given orders in a language he didn't understand. There you go. I've never read that line in any newspaper before, nor did any old orgy.
Neither would I. Interesting. The Telegraph going to do their top 5 orgies now over the next couple of days or something?
I mean, you know, the British ruling class and their depravity probably knows no bounds, so I'm sure there's better examples even. OTB AM, live in association with Gillette. Good morning, start with Gillette. Give me the confidence to tackle the day ahead. There was one other comment from a little bit earlier on. Do you think Trent is going to be picked for the Euros today? Surely he would have stuck by Trent for the last international break and brought him anyway, regardless of his form. Apparently Southgate now is going to pick 30 today, and it'll be whittled down to 26 on the basis of injuries that happen after the 2 big games this week on Thursday and Saturday evening, and they'll finalise it at that point. So I don't know. Is Trent going to go? I'm not sure. He should be in that 30 squad, and if he's not, well then. And then Will on YouTube says, don't let Sheahan downplay Kerry. We need the hype at maximum.
Is that not the same comment from last week? Is this Tommy just copying and pasting in the same comment every single week?
I think Tommy obviously feels
the hype is here, Will. Don't be worried about that. I'm excited. I am literally hyped, as the kids may say, about what is to come this summer.
Okay, time for us to move on. It is the second of the teams in Group B. It's Russia. It's our Euros cheat sheet.
Yeah, Russia. Let's get a 90-second timer for Russia. So, you might have forgotten that Russia got banned from competing in and hosting all major sporting events for a period of 4 years in 2019. So, you might ask, how are Russia not only playing in this summer's tournament, but also hosting it? Well, it turns out that UEFA is not defined as a major event organisation with regards to rulings on anti-doping breaches. Long story short, nothing to see here. Everyone, can you please move swiftly along? So, on the football field, Russia were also in the same qualifying group as Belgium, and they won all their games that didn't involve Belgium. They obviously hosted the World Cup 3 years ago and beat Spain on penalties. Incredible scenes in Moscow that night. And in the quarterfinals then, they lost on penalties to Croatia. At the last Euros, they finished bottom of a group involving England, Wales and Slovakia. Now, Artem Dzyuba, their main player, one of their main players, he became a national hero at the last World Cup, scoring 3 times. And there he is, accepting his winner's medal dressed as Deadpool for Zenit St. Petersburg a couple of weeks ago. He was their top scorer while qualifying for this tournament, but he was left out for a couple of games last year after a little bit of his own homemade X-rated content got leaked from his phone. This is a family show. Google it, you filthy animal. He has since pulled himself back into the squad and is their top scorer with 3 goals already in the World Cup qualifying campaign. Since the likes of the last World Cup, the likes of Igor Akinfeev, Sergei Ignashevich have all retired, but Yuri Zhirkov is still going strong at the age of 37. There he is. And finally, let's have a look at the home kit first of all. I'm going to guess that the football hipsters are mad at Russia for having a thick trim on the sleeves, but I'm going to go ahead and say that that is totally acceptable. And then the away jersey, my expert opinion on this one is that that jersey is nice.
Yeah.
The away jersey actually is kind of nice. I would totally wear that.
I like the thick trim as well. Does that prove how uncultured I am? Tell us about them, Eoin, apart from the players you already mentioned.
Yeah, they've got 3 players in Europe's top 5 leagues. They've got Alexander Golovin, who is definitely their best player. He's struggled at times with Monaco to get into the team this season. He's a number 10. He's got 5 goals, 9 assists for them in Ligue 1 this season, despite struggling to get meaningful game time. He's, as I say, their most talented player. In behind Dzyuba, they actually have a bit of a threat up front. They've also got Denis Cheryshev with Valencia. He'll play on the left. Another man who's struggling to get a full 90 minutes in any game. And then over in Serie A, they've got Alexei Miranchuk, who plays with Atalanta. Again, struggling to get meaningful minutes in a top league, was barely used in the Champions League, but he did get COVID early in the season and that put the brakes on him. Since that qualification campaign that I mentioned, they've lost 5-0 to Serbia in the Nations League. They failed to get promoted from League B. They then lost to Slovakia in their most recent World Cup qualifier, but did beat Malta and Slovenia. So the form is mixed, to say the least. And then when it comes to this year's tournament, if they do manage to beat Denmark, it will open up a whole world of possibilities for Russia. As we've already mentioned, that side of the draw is relatively forgiving. But the fact of the matter is I don't think they will beat Denmark. I think Denmark will beat them. And I think Russia will finish third, but they will qualify to be one of the best qualifying third teams. But they'll end up playing France, and they'll end up going home in the round of 16.
Okay, so that's not a bad tournament by Russian standards these days?
Well, the Russian standards these days are getting to the World Cup quarter-final.
At home,
so
at home. We all know what happens at home.
Yeah, at home, yeah, indeed. And yeah, like what a mad sort of couple of weeks that was in 2018. We all saw this as like, could this be like South Africa as a terrible host nation who don't really stand a prayer, and they were actually quite good at times. And it was like John Duggan was there. He had videos of these amazing scenes in the streets of Russia after that Spain game. So I don't think they'll get back to that level somehow. But that, as I said, that Denmark game, I think on the second or third day of the tournament, or their second or third match day of the tournament, that is going to be the key match for them.
All right. OTB AM live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, giving the confidence to tackle it ahead. Our Euros cheat sheet will continue, pardon me, in our build-up all the way through until kickoff. If you have any beef with our cheat sheet, then get in touch with us. 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number if you want to. Now, I'm delighted to say Graham Hunter is with us with plenty to talk about. We may as well start with the Euros, Graham, and the big news. No Real Madrid players in a Spain squad for a major tournament. This is either folly or genius, or maybe it doesn't matter. I don't know. What do you think?
No, I couldn't agree more. You typically artful dodger, Jerry. You got yourself out of trouble there just in the last 3 words. I was disgusted that Spain didn't pick Modric or Kroos or Courtois, for example, Casemiro. There were three Spaniards available to Luis Enrique to pick, and my bridling fury is not aimed at you or the listeners of the Paul AM, but at some of the horse that's been broadcast and written in Spain. Of the 3 footballers who could have been picked by Luis Enrique, I would concede that Nacho should have been, and I'm baffled by his exclusion. Although Luis Enrique is a very predictably consistent guy, and given that Nacho hadn't been featuring in previous squads, I'd guess that some of those who know him really well had intuited that Nacho wouldn't go. But the lack of a right-footed centre-half, the lack, even in yesterday's press comments when Luis Enrique said, we've had an infinity of injuries at right back. Well, Nacho can play there and play well there. He's been in really good form recently. That baffles me. That absolutely baffles me. Carvajal isn't fit and would have not just travelled, would have started, and Luis Enrique said so yesterday, but he's out injured. So that leaves you down to 2. And the big one, well, he'd hinted about Ramos, and he'd said that he was only going to take players that were, in prime condition. Ramos has had an awful 21. When he last went with the Spain team, he played a couple of minutes to get an extra cap and went back home, injured to Real Madrid, was out for the vast part of the remainder of the season. And Luis Enrique got flayed in the media for having played him. He said yesterday, look, I lose whether I pick him or whether I don't pick him. Now, the underlying story is that in the last set of internationals, which included the games against Georgia, for example, what happened was Sergio Ramos, Luis Enrique, to start and stop. The first interview that Luis Enrique gave after his press comments when he took over this job again, I was lucky enough to do for UEFA. He didn't say, it's got to be Graham. It was UEFA, and it was with me. We had 15 minutes before last summer's, what was supposed to be last summer's tournament. It got postponed. On that day, I asked him questions about Sergio Ramos, the character, his skills, his captain. Luis Enrique eulogized him and went into detail. There was a recognition of not just footballing skills and attitude, but a similarity in personalities between the then captain and this coach. Over the remaining months, Luis Enrique has begun to think that Sergio Ramos is just seeking caps, that he's seeking the world record or to extend the world record in terms of number of wins which he's got for international football. And when the last squad was named, for example, Robert Sanchez from Brighton was in, and I hear words that Sergio Ramos was a little bit, how would you call it? A little bit free with his opinions about the quality of the last squad. And who's this guy? What's he doing here? You can't do that with Luis Enrique. He is he's not brittle, but he's volatile. Don't step on his toes once. I mean, not even once. If you do, you're in trouble. So a combination of horrendous fitness problems and the fact that Sergio Ramos had kind of stepped on his manager's toes with Spain last time out meant not picked. And I think that's a bigger argument than no Real Madrid players. Should Nacho have gone? In my opinion, without question, he should have gone. I find that completely, it's hard to justify, hard to argue about. Ramos, I can understand. Ramos is a phenomenon of a person and a footballer, and fully fit and fully concentrated, he should be there. But I'd ask anybody who's seen him recently, is he either of those things? And the answer is no. So your question about no Real Madrid players, it's not a slight by this guy who left Real Madrid, played for Barcelona, and has consistently been portrayed as anti-Madridista. And maybe when it comes to Barca playing Madrid, he might be. Nacho's the only one, Jar, and that one may prove to have been a mistake.
Sorry, it's interesting what you say there about Ramos. So how is this going to be depicted, or how has it already been depicted in some of the Spanish media? Because I would be concerned a little bit about what you say there, that there is a way of framing this that the manager has got a little bit too sensitive, basically, and has left out one of their key players. Is there a danger that that is the way it gets pictured, and if Spain end up crashing out, there will be the fingers pointed saying, well, you should have a thick skin and you should be picking Sergio Ramos for a tournament?
It doesn't. If they don't do well, whatever is perceived to be doing well, of course they will. But one is that what football's about. I mean, do any successful managers, a lot of managers are thick-skinned and do care what the media say, but do any successful managers really care when fingers are pointed at them? No. Do they, France? They're not interested in that. Secondly, if you compare it to, for example, Ferguson, hard decisions were always grasped. And I'm making a comparison because I don't think a lot is made of Fergie saying, one of the things that said I wasn't necessarily better than my opponents all the time, but one of the things that separated me from others was seeing a tough decision and defecating rather than sitting on the pot, if I can use that expression. Grasp the nettle, weigh up the consequences, but do it. Make a decision one way or another and stick to it, and do it quickly and move on. Now, whether Luis Enrique is right or wrong about this, he's followed that principle. And I think there are clues to suggest that it might be. For example, during the last World Cup in Russia, Ramos wasn't one of the players who looked as if he was on the pitch. He was letting Spain down, but he was at 3/4 speed. I hear tales of how card games through the night, phoning the physios and the masseurs at 4 a.m. for a massage because he'd been up late. And he believes that one of the things that has made Sergio Ramos great is that he believes that the world should dance to his tune. And all great sportsmen and women have an element of that in them. Some of them have it as their dominant characteristic, and it works. When you're not at your peak, that then your very strength can become an Achilles heel. And I think there has been a bit of that. I genuinely do. Luis Enrique trusted Sergio Ramos when he said, I'm fit to play in the last squad, and he wasn't. He immediately got injured. So look, there'll be, but Luis Enrique presaged your question on, to be fair. He said, listen, whether I pick him or don't pick him, whether I play him or don't play him, there'll be a row. It's Sergio Ramos. So, whether or not he's made a mistake on Ramos might emerge. Nacho, I think he's not the headline name, but it's a far better debate. It's a far better question. And it's far more important as to whether, in this instance, as to whether Spain do well in the Euros.
We'll have plenty of time to preview the Euros and whether or not Luis Enrique is going to be good and whether or not Spain are going to be good. But I do want to talk about, I think you're in Gdansk. Is that correct? Are you actually at the game?
I think I am. I'm in Sopot, where so many Irish danced and enjoyed themselves, and the team were billeted. So yeah, I'm going to Gdansk later in the day for a little bit of shopping. I'm going to the stadium to do my work, but I'm in Sopot right now. So yeah.
Sopot is beautiful.
Well intuited.
For anybody who is unaware, it's like this kind of lovely seaside town. And
But for anybody who's unaware, Chair, I'm sorry to jump in like an uninvited guest at an orgy, but in all seriousness, Sopot is, what's the name of the seaboard? Baltic. What's the temperature today? Baltic. Is it raining? Yes, it is.
All right.
So all your Sopot is lovely. That's in an ethereal iCloud of destinations. It's Baltic and it's raining. There you are.
We had happy times before the football started.
I'm pleased for you.
When Ireland were at the Euros. Come here. Okay, Villareal, they represent one of those challenges for Manchester United that has been tricky traditionally whenever the teams have met. I don't think Manchester United have ever scored against them. And also this Villareal team, they're actually quite well set up for this Man United team in many ways, particularly with no Harry Maguire.
Yeah, listen, one, it's a natural fact what you've stated, that it's been 0-0 draws every time they met. It won't be this time. I don't think there's any real relevance of that. If you look at the complete change in coaching and staff, playing staff. So, and moreover, again, you're right, Villareal haven't simply gone through. They're the only unbeaten team in the competition. They arrive at the final having coped really well with a new manager and a slightly upgraded squad. So hats off. And yeah, they've got the ultra specialist in winning this. For example, Unai Emery is going to overtake Trapattoni in terms of being the guy with the most Europa League matches coached. It'll be 101 come Wednesday. He's won it 3 times. He's going to be the first manager ever to coach 5 teams in a UEFA final, ahead of, again, Ferguson, for example, Ancelotti. So set up well in terms of their resources to cope with Manchester United. I agree with you. And in the last 5 times Villareal have played away from Spain in the Europa League, they haven't conceded a goal, not once. But I think there's an absolutely crucial point, which is that although Gero Rulli, the Argentinian keeper, has been the author of those clean sheets, anybody who watched him in the Arsenal games, and indeed anybody who watched him at the weekend when he was given extra match practice against Real Madrid, would understand that his exclusion from the La Liga squad has cost him confidence and form, particularly with the ball into the box coming for crosses. And Edinson Cavani, since he got fit, and since United began in the knockout stages of the Europa League, having failed to win that group, which they should have won, never mind go out of, in the Champions League, pardon me, he's scored or made a goal every 31 minutes. Now, I assume that United will have scouted Villareal exhaustively. They'll press Rulli when he's on the ball, trying to play out from the back. And I think they'll hang the ball into the box as regularly as they're able to, looking predominantly for Cavani, but of course also for Rashford. And I think Rulli is odds against to cope with it. Now, he's one of those cat-like goalkeepers whereby on his day, you'll see him leaping all over the goal frame and doing acrobatic things, and wow, you're like, very good. But in terms of his reliability and just the basics of goalkeeping, housekeeping, I'm unconvinced, and I think Unai Emery might I think he should go for Asenjo and take the type of decision, sorry to quote Ferguson again, that Ferguson did in 1990 in the replay with Crystal Palace after the 3-3 draw, and poor old Jim Leighton was left out. I think that could be crucial to the destination of the trophy at the end of Wednesday night. But Unai Emery seems pretty fixed on Gero Rulli, so maybe that's a decision already taken, and United will simply target him. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, so you make Manchester United slight favourites, or is that depending on the team selection?
Yeah, I think it's a different match of Asenjo. I'm not saying Asenjo is Superman, but he's far more reliable. He's got an extraordinary character. He's been through injury hell and 3 times at least fought his way back when he admits that he was worried about being able to walk with his kids at one stage of his knee injury. So to be in this position now, an elite goalkeeper, still in prime form and prime fitness, and simply, I think, able to cope with the particular threats that United offer better than Rulli. If that decision were made, I would then begin to say to you, look, Villareal are really good at keeping the ball. Albiol has learned masses from his time in Napoli and might be able to cope with Cavani. He's not quite as quick as Cavani, But in terms of physical power, holding him off and reading the movements, his killer movements, as Rashford called it to me when we were talking about Cavani in an interview recently, I'd begin to argue that Villareal are not to be underestimated. But if you start with your Achilles heel in goal, then I think it's proven that that's quite a problem.
What's been your take on Manchester United season?
Yeah, as somebody who's not vested in writing about them every day and doesn't support them, I've been really interested. I've really enjoyed it. I said this to you many, many months ago that temporarily I was interested to see how Solskjaer could develop, particularly the younger talent. And I'm not somebody who's... I have thought that Ed Woodward has made it more difficult for United to succeed rather than less difficult. Is diminishing influence, the introduction of Carrick and latterly Darran Fletcher to the coaching team. I know a lot about how training is going and its intensity. And you look at, I mean, it's a screw up if you don't go through that group. But 2 draws and they win the Champions League group. If you look at their form thereafter in the knockout stages, I think they scored 18 times in knockout stages. It might be that Roma and Milan are slightly diminished from the times that Solskjaer was a player. But if you go to San Sebastian and win and you knock out Roma and you go to Milan and you win in the San Siro, particularly given where Milan have finished the season in Serie A, if you begin to accumulate, one of the things that I've been taught in my career by people in football is, it's a scouting analogy, but the elite scouts, the elite recruitment people I believe in football often say, look, it's the easiest thing in the world to scout a player and say, what doesn't he do? But you have to focus on what somebody does do well and then try and correct the flaws. If there's an overbalance of flaws, then obviously forget the whole thing. Applying that logic to what United have done in terms of recruitment, in terms of reliability, in terms of their ability to beat bigger teams, I think they've developed strategically. And I see the outcry, the hot venom outcry in the matches where United maybe turn up and don't thrill or don't look as if they're at full power. And I see an inverse proportion of heat towards that than appreciation towards their development. And I think they have developed. I think you could name a number of players who've got significantly better. I also believe that they now require tweaking in the transfer market rather than mass surgery. So I'm watching it, and also I don't want to be biased because I enjoy Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, but I do. I enjoyed him as a footballer. I like what he stands for as a manager. Did he perhaps need to develop as a coach strategically? Probably he did. His man management skills, I don't have any doubt about whatsoever. And speaking to him recently, he talked about when he does and doesn't apply what he still called that the hairdryer treatment. And he talked about the difference between giving somebody a rollicking, but also the time to pick a player, coach them individually, boost them up. I like what he stands for, and I hope he succeeds. And at the moment, I would say it's United, so people won't say win or lose on Wednesday. But I can say win or lose on Wednesday. I think they've had a successful season. But above all, if you look at the change in them, I think they're developing. And I also find them entertaining to watch, which has to be, if you're not a United fan and you're wondering about, like, do I spend the money to go and watch them? Do I watch them on television if they're playing? My answer right now is yes. And that's not a bad benchmark.
No, that's fair enough. We talked a couple of weeks ago about the title race in La Liga and how amazing a title race ultimately it was, as everybody stuttered and slid across the line. And in retrospect, in many years to come, I think when we look back with a little bit of hindsight, we'll probably, I think, give Suarez the credit for this season as much, if not more, than the manager. You talked about the last time you were on about Simeone and how the conservatism had kind of taken hold, particularly over the second half of the season. But it's Suarez who drags them over that line and continues to be at a sheer bloody-minded level that we've witnessed from him throughout his career. But, I mean, it looked like at the end of his Barcelona period that had gone or had diminished somehow. But was it just the change of scenery that refreshed him? Was it the quest for vengeance that lit that fire? Or was that there last year at Barcelona but just badly managed?
Well, I wish I had the stats. That's why I'm looking off camera a little bit at the moment, because if I'd known that you were going to ask me that, then I'd have said to you, hold on a second, let's see how many he scored last year. I mean, I think he scored over 20 last year in a Barcelona side that was floundering. And therefore, I'm going to look it up as we're speaking, and I'm going to say to you that I think that it was always there. To the extent that, I mean, I don't need to get obsessed by this, but to the extent that at the beginning of the season, Gerard, I was saying there's no way Suarez should be sold. So here we are, last season, Luis Suarez, FC Barcelona. He scored 16 times in La Liga with an injury.
5 more in the Champions League.
And so there you have it. So let me cut to the right answer. Not necessarily. It's not that I'm not addressing your question. I know what happened. Josep Maria Bartomeu, the president of Football Club Barcelona, went to a senior player's house last summer, not long after the Bayern Munich defeat, thrashing, not defeat, and said to him, you don't have to worry about Suarez anymore. I'm getting rid of him. He's not bossing this club anymore. I'm the president, so I can tell you that Suarez... So Bartomeu, unable to, because he wished to, push Messi out, chose Messi's pal. He couldn't get Butch, so he got Sundance instead. And he made it an order to Koeman to get rid of Suarez. So before we assess the difference between last season football and this season football for Suarez, we have to go to the exact reason. It was an act of ego. I mean, to be honest with you, a despicable act of ego. Number one, whether he goes on and wins the title with Atleti or goes to Juventus, which was the original goal, Bartomeu, when I'm taking my club back, I'm doing it. That's a crap criteria involved. It damaged Messi's summer, which then may have damaged his preparation for a season in which he scored 30 times in La Liga. You know, had Bartomeu avoided the knee-jerk, I'm having my club back, a handful of months before he did a midnight flit and buggered off and left the club anyway. I mean, Jose Maria Bartomeu should be socially forced to wear a clown outfit for the next 20 years. You know, in public, at home, in bed, in the shower, clown. You know, big red nose, funny hat, definitely. But he forced them out, and Koeman followed orders because he wanted the job so much. When Suarez went away, Atleti was a perfect bed for him to lie in. At the time, I remember we were just doing the big interview Q&A for our socios yesterday, and our editors played me back the tape from last summer when I said he's got a 20 goal season in himself. And he has had. The thing isn't always the goal total, although Suarez is the player in La Liga with the most points won per goal scored, i.e. they were important goals, not decorative. And the last 2 weekends, they were going to lose the title. To the extent that if they'd drawn against Valladolid, and Suarez is winning goal, of course, then Real Madrid's win at home to Villareal would have given Real Madrid the title. So he did win them the title. If you want to expand the argument, then we could talk about Oblak being the best goalkeeper. Statistically, Llorente's eruption as a goal menace, the way in which Savic really commanded the defense. There are other heroes. But the man who plays Kelly is definitely Luis Suarez. And I hope Bartomeu, that's the sound of him out now at the joke shop buying the clown outfit. Yeah, it is.
Graham, great stuff. Enjoy the highlights of Sopot and eventually Gdansk as well. Great to have you with us. Thanks a million.
Cheers, lads.
It's Graham Hunter there, live from Poland, where, of course, that game is tomorrow. It's Wednesday. I got my days mixed up a little bit earlier on, but that game is, of course, tomorrow, and we'll keep you updated on it across the course of Off the Ball on Wednesday night on News Talk. Kickoff is at 8 o'clock for Villareal and Manchester United. We'll have more previews on it tomorrow and reaction, of course, on Thursday morning for you. OTB AM, live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. We will, of course, be obsessing about the Champions League final and what's going to happen on Saturday evening. And the best place to prepare for that is, of course, right here on the OTB network. You still have time to register for our very special roadshow with Pepsi this Thursday night on OTB. It's a virtual roadshow, so all you got to do is register for a ticket. It kicks off at 5:30 sharp. Manchester United legend Teddy Sheringham is going to talk about that night in Barcelona. Sean Wright-Phillips, of course, very well placed to talk about both clubs, Manchester City and Chelsea. And he'll be on talking about that. And we also have Republic of Ireland star Denise O'Sullivan. It's a very special remote roadshow on Thursday, the 27th of May. Nathan's hosting 5:30 on Thursday evening. And it will start sharp, so make sure you register for tickets in advance and get online about 20 past. Make sure you're there, because when it kicks off, it will be lit. That's our very special remote roadshow with Pepsi this Thursday night on OTB. It is 8:44 this morning. We're going to talk with golf with John Duggan in just a moment. Did you see the Brooks Koepka?
Yes.
So what happened?
Bryson DeChambeau.
People haven't seen this. What's going on?
Oh my God, these guys absolutely hate one another. Obviously, Brooks Koepka has pretty pointedly spoken about the speed, the pace at which Bryson DeChambeau plays. I think the very existence of Bryson DeChambeau kind of annoys Brooks Koepka. They're doing media beside one another, and there is like this slow pan towards Brooks Koepka as the interviewer is getting ready, and you can just see Koepka like rolling his eyes to heaven after something that has been said beside him. Koepka starts talking about the weekend that he's had, and he has to stop mid-sentence as Bryson DeChambeau, it is soon revealed, walks behind him, and he's like, rolls his eyes again, and he's like, sorry, I just lost my train of thought. And then I think under his breath, he's like, he's talking so much bullshit. Or he mentioned some allusion to...
Not so much under his breath, listening to that BS.
Listening to that bullshit, yeah, that was it. And I can't wait for the Ryder Cup. I can't wait for these two guys to have to...
Would you pair them together?
Yes. I would, for the sake of... Not like it would be self-sabotage on the part of the United States.
Would it though? Would they not be driven to produce the greatest golf that ever has been played? Because how can you be the one, like two ridiculous alpha dogs? Maybe they just eat themselves. I don't know.
I think they do. I think it would be terrible for the United States of America, but I would like to see it happen all the same. I would love to see them playing together. I just want to see the body language. Like, maybe there's just enough people at the Ryder Cup for them to be 10 bodies between each other whenever they're doing the team photographs and all that sort of thing. And maybe we won't get the juice, but it does feel like this is building to a crescendo now at the end of the summer.
I wonder what it was that was particular that time. Or was it just the general generic, I hate this guy, and so therefore, you know, they're like a married couple at this point who just haven't signed the divorce papers. Every little thing that each other one does annoys themselves.
I think that's exactly what it is. Now, I'd like to actually find what the specific Bryson DeChambeau interview is. The problem is once you go looking online for it, especially on Twitter, you get a lot of people just making up fake stuff, which is obviously hilarious about what did Bryson DeChambeau actually say in the interview beside Brooks Koepka. As you can imagine, there is a number of things that are pretty funny on that front. I don't know what the truth is.
They're recording this interview. It's like for one of it looked like it was an NBC logo, so I'm not sure, which would make it potentially on the Golf Channel as well. And Brooks Koepka obviously knows what he's doing, because he swears twice, and like that ruins that piece of footage. They're going to have to do it again, and you know, I don't know.
I'm fully team Brooks Koepka. Obviously, I've always been a big fan of his, and I just want this beef to escalate, and I want him to be the victor as time goes by. I want him to win more majors than Bryson DeChambeau. You can see why Bryson just rubs those sort of people up the wrong way, though. Like this sort of, oh, you're a big guy. Well, I've added science to the fact that I'm a big guy, and I'm therefore smarter than you and better than you. Like that would just completely rub up an absolute kind of, as you say, a self-proclaimed alpha dog like Brooks Koepka the wrong way.
John Duggan, good morning to you.
Sure, Eoin, how are we doing?
Our resident alpha dog, how are you?
Good. I remember I used to love Family Guy. Don't know if you lads enjoyed it, but there was a scene in Family Guy, I just remember it. I was actually looking for it this morning, where these two kind of frat boys just keep on going, yeah, yeah! And that is a bit what Brooks Koepka and Bryson DeChambeau are all about. Too much testosterone. Kevin and Perry, they need to grow up, the pair of them. And but it's good fun. What is more interesting for me is the fact that it leaked out, because this was done last Friday. And how will Brooks Koepka be feeling about his interviews and his relationship with the media going forward? Because it's already prickly enough.
Yeah.
And this is not going to add any kind of harmony to the situation.
Unless he's happy for it to be leaked out. Unless he thinks that like him being distanced from Bryson DeChambeau is a good thing for him.
Yeah, I think you're right about the Ryder Cup. I would love to see them on an alternate shot. If you looked at the body language between Tiger and Phil back in 2004, it was absolutely horrific. Now, they're great friends now because I suppose their careers have diverged in ways. But back then, Tiger was the top dog and Phil was snapping at his heels and had only won a major for the first time that year. And it was an absolute disaster. And Europe took him to the woodshed, the cleaners. But they were all over the shop. But you'd love to see on a four sum where you having Bryson hitting into the water off the first tee and Brooks like absolutely stinking facing on him. And then the blame, the acrimony, the recriminations would leave like Phil Mickelson and Tom Watson
for decades
in the halfpenny place.
Yeah, for decades. It would be great. It would be another brilliant subplot. The Ryder Cup organisers should insist, listen, buddy, you're not allowed to play unless you put these two in the foursomes.
Or in the next major, you know, like actually get the USGA putting them on the same tee box. Like Richard on YouTube has been in touch to tell us what was said. I actually did see this on Twitter earlier and I assumed that this was one of the fake ones. Richard says, Brooks was talking about it, that it was hard to read the greens. And Bryson said under his breath while walking behind Brooks that you have to start it straight. And I've just looked on that online and Brooks Koepka says, I felt it difficult to read sometimes, but Bryson DeChambeau just got to start it right on line. And that seems to be what was said all right. I did think that was maybe not true, but it does seem that there's a critical mass of people saying that's what Bryson DeChambeau muttered under his breath. So it wasn't just the existence of Bryson DeChambeau that has annoyed Brooks Koepka during the course of this interview. It was actually
having to listen to that.
So Bryson DeChambeau's giving it back. Like, I mean, this isn't just like...
yeah, but he's in the middle of an interview. That's classless, no?
Yeah, like class on the part of DeChambeau.
Classless, yeah.
Yeah.
But like...
I would agree.
I don't know. It's their version of Waterford. Sorry, it's their version of Wexford versus Clare, essentially, in America. Ours is better, and as I said at the start of the show, you know, it goes all the way to the Russian hackers. That's the butterfly effect here. The Russian hackers pulling down the HSE systems, the HSE finding time to go off and look at the video footage to identify two of the Clare lads being in close contact with two of the Wexford lads. This is mad stuff. I mean, obviously, we've just invented the first part of it.
Yeah, completely. Like, it's the eye roll is like sorry, I literally lost I wasn't responding to you.
You lost your train of thought.
I was just watching it again,
listening to my BS.
Like, it is. There are two great eye rolls in sports media history. This is one right up there. The second one is the James Harden eye roll, which is obviously one of the most used GIFs on social media.
That's the basketball guy, is it?
Yeah, the guy
he just walks off.
Walks off from the interview.
Yeah, I use that all the time. Yeah.
That's the very start of this. That's the first eye roll. But then there's a second eye roll. It's like I'm watching this without sound again and again and again. I don't think I'll ever stop watching this. There's 3.9 million views already on the original clip on Twitter. That's going to be at 10 million by the end of the day.
Okay. What else is going on, John?
Well, Phil Mickelson, I just I suppose wanted to say something about him. I just thought it was an amazing story, a wonderful story on Sunday. It was almost spiritual with the crowds behind him, and a bit like Tiger Woods at Eastlake. It was just, I've been following him for 25 years. I've always loved the way he plays the game, his incredible ability around the greens to rival Seve, really. And I love the fact that at the beginning of his career, he was such a gambler, such a gung-ho player. He needed to dial that in. He won 22 times before he won his first major, which is quite remarkable when you think about it. And then he's won, 6 majors, and he's a major champion at the age of 50. But one of the greatest players who've ever played the game. And I love the fact that in the last few years, he's really, really worked hard on not only his body, in that he's fasting now 36 hours a week. He's given up the junk food. He's got arthritis, but also his mind. And you could see even, this is a Phil Mickelson I'd never seen before. Like, you think about the Phil of the 20s and the 30s, that all the breathing, the being present, being in the moment. And then I think it was the 16th, just absolutely smashing a drive past Brooks Koepka. It was wonderful television. Golf is greater than, when you're in maths in school, it's less than, greater than. Golf is greater than Hollywood.
And has been for the last, certainly these little subplots are adding to it. So you, as a big fan of him, then obviously love this.
Yeah, I loved it. I was a little bit, I remember I actually asked him for his autograph in 2002 at a tournament. I was that enamored and that, dazzled by Phil Mickelson. So I got the autograph, which is something I probably shouldn't have done when I was working in the media, but I was young. And I just thought this guy was unbelievable. He hadn't won a major by that stage, and breaking through at the Masters the way he did that push, winning 3 times at the Masters, the pine straw shot. And also, he was not a good player of links courses earlier in his career. He was such a high ball hitter. He played in American target golf courses. He had to learn over so many years to win the Open Championship the way he did at Muirfield. I just think he's an amazing golfer and a good guy. We all love the autograph signing and everything. But the brother on the bag, there was that story, and the brother giving him a bollocking on the 7th there the other day and saying, look, you got to commit to win this tournament. And Phil did commit then from that point onwards. And won it deservedly. So obviously golfers are now stronger, they're now fitter, they're now in a better place. You can see Harrington even being in contention, and that was just a great story, Harrington and Larry. And Harrington said an interesting thing, that it's almost they were having just a practice round together. And the enjoyment that they both had spurred each other on to both shoot 3 under par. And that says a lot about the fact that you just need to sometimes enjoy it. And I wonder, is Rory McIlroy enjoying the game as he should be? Once again, I felt lulled into the false sense of security. You need to enjoy these things, and Shane and Padraig definitely enjoyed it, and Phil, despite the pressure, seemed to revel in it.
Yeah, backing Rory, not something that you enjoyed at the weekend. John, good stuff. Thanks a million. We'll talk to you more detail later in the week. Thanks. That's John Duggan giving us his thoughts on Phil Mickelson this week. It is 8:55. If you want to get in touch, we'd love to hear from you. Brian Dillon says, Team Bryson all day long, and Mairead Doyle says, Brooks is the man. He says it as it is. I find it impossible not to do that in a John Hartson voice, by the way. But anyway, OTB AM live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Now, I'm delighted to say the manager of the Antrim footballers, Enda McGinley, is with us. Enda, how are you getting on?
I'm good.
The Owl lads doing well. That's something that's resonating with all Antrim football fans, as you've had 2 sensational points kicked by Paddy Cunningham over the last couple of weeks. The outside of the left boot has never looked so good.
Absolutely. Well, it was his instep that pulled it out of the bag last week, but absolutely he has a wand of a left foot that's been known for a long time, and it's still producing the goods. So certainly we're thankful for it. Now, obviously he'll be tough to listen to for a wee while, but I'll certainly take that.
How's it been going for you so far? What has been the thing that you've learned most over the very short period of time that you've been able to work with the players?
Some questions there. How much have you learned? Like, it has been completely eye-opening, and obviously I would have been about them type of setups quite a bit during my own career. But when you're the man in charge, there is just so much to cover. And obviously, given the COVID scenario and the constant readjustment of calendars that we were facing, I think I threw out about 6 or 7 different organised calendars where I had everything plotted out towards first league games, but the goalpost kept moving. So the biggest thing has been that you just have to remain adaptable, and your plans both for the teams and for the organisation of the teams has been continually thrown up in the air. Then when you've got back to training, you've lost players with niggles and injuries, and with the games being so tight, a simple injury will keep a fella out for 2-3 games now. So you have to completely change up your team around that. So the biggest thing has just been to be adaptable, but just to keep pushing on. You have to accept every team is facing these sort of scenarios. But it has certainly been a challenging few months.
Has it been as enjoyable as you hoped it would be?
Funny, the treasurer was asking me that. The county board, in fairness, have been great, and one of the questions was, well, are you enjoying it? And there was a long pause in response to it. I love the coaching side of it. Love working with the boys. They're a great bunch, and they're really, really engaged. Like, they're phenomenal in that way, and they are giving it everything. I love the management team and the backroom team that I'm working with. That's all brilliant. County board has been great. I love the training sessions, being back in a team environment. All of that's brilliant. Like, that's what we're all used to. Anybody that's played in team sports, and there is just something special being back involved in it again. Standing on the sideline, watching games, feeling completely responsible for any mistake or any problem out there is one that I'm still getting used to, and needing to try and keep in perspective. The games are tense, and we certainly haven't made it easy for us. I think we've had 4 penalties against us, 3 of which weren't in the box, which is a difficult thing to start getting the head around. But those are the challenges of the new game, I suppose.
Feeling responsible for the mistakes made on the pitch. It's interesting that you feel that. I guess that's one of the things that a lot of coaches talk about, is putting the responsibility on the players, and that's kind of like a two-way street, that they will take the responsibility in a positive way, and then also in a negative way, it is their responsibility if little errors pop up here and there.
Yeah, it's strange, and it's probably just a mental thing. You take it on yourself, and it's probably not really the case. But I suppose publicly, you are very much the face of it. And I read Park Joyce's comments about that he felt completely responsible for the performance against Kerry. Yet, both in his time and my own time as a player, you're never thinking that the manager is in some way responsible for your performance level. So I think for managers, it's always a difficult one. The buck does stop with you. So if a player arrives not motivated or not willing to put it absolutely all in, is that the manager's responsibility or the player? You can argue that all day, but a huge amount for me always comes down to the players, and particularly in a year like this when there's been so little time in terms of preparation. Like Antrim's got off to a good start. That's the players more than us as a management. Like you can only change so much in several weeks. So their results are theirs. But as a manager, you do take that responsibility, even how the backroom team works, even how timings work, how everything works. You feel completely responsible, and if anything's going wrong, you know that you're the person that's going to be critiqued, and that does add to the pressure and take a wee bit of getting used to it. But again, I think that thing of perspective and trying to keep that, I think that's a big learning process, and certainly it's something I know I need to get better at, because I'm allowing it to have too much of an impact at the minute when things are going well. So what it'll be like when things are going badly, I don't know, but. Yeah, that sense of ultimate responsibility for everything, even like if a fella's missing a 21-yard shot, you still somehow feel responsible for that when of course you just can't.
So how are you going to kind of not address that, but kind of, I guess, assess that over the next little while? Is there going to be a bit of your own psychology that's going to come into play there, or what's the plan?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I suppose we never describe these things as sports psychology or mindfulness or all of these other modern terms, but without a doubt that's there. And certain personalities, like everybody's got different personalities, and some managers it'll not touch you at all, and other people it will be there. I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's something you acknowledge and you take on board and you address. You use the management team that's around you to help with that as well and to keep perspective. And I've been very lucky. The group of boys I have around me are brilliant. So it's accepting that and passing more responsibility on to the players. I think a lot of the attributes of the modern game, how it's in some ways so technical now, and there's a lot of things about processes and a lot of things about plans and moves and whatnot. It has become a wee bit easier for me, for the modern player, that if something's not working, that it's a sideline issue. Whereas for me, and the top teams still do this, the top teams of them, if something's not working, they'll sort it out themselves on the pitch, they'll correct it. Like Dublin, of course, are the team at the minute, and I actually showed the Antrim boys a clip from the start of the year from, it was a semi-final or an All-Ireland final, one of the Mayo games a few years ago, where Dublin lost maybe 3-4 kickouts in a row, but they didn't panic, they didn't start collapsing in on themselves. They just sorted itself out. They just got a simple kick out away, and away they went. And big teams do that. They weren't looking at the sideline thinking, oh, we haven't worked on our kickouts enough. So it's that sort of mental strength that's absolutely key, and come down the last 10-15 minutes of games. It's that mental strength that teams, you can't be looking to the sideline. The teams and the players have to realise it's just a game of football, and to forget about all of that other technical stuff and just figure it out on the pitch. And I suppose that's, for me, a big part of management, is about giving them the tools and the confidence that they're ultimately responsible on the pitch for decisions and for spotting stuff and trying to adapt. We have a lot of work to do behind the scenes to develop them skills and to give them the confidence to do that, because a lot of the time we've been spoon feeding them for several years now, and the game did really change in a tactical sense. And with that, I think we lost the ability of players to just see stuff on the pitch and go at it, rather than looking at the sideline and blaming the sideline. So that's not me absolving myself of responsibility, but they have to have the tools to be able to adapt on the pitch, because the game is just too fluid now. There's too much happening, and so they have to be able to adapt and play the game as they see it and remain confident in themselves to deal with whatever's happening.
That's really interesting, because it has to inform every part of training. Then you're asking players to train decision making, and at the same time to understand the tactical nuances of how a game is evolving. So that's very kind of core fundamental stuff, while at the same time you have to work on the technical skills of the game too. So it's a big L job, and that means you're limited amount of training time and contact hours with the players becomes very intense.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you get asked so often by a player, right? If I'm standing here in the pitch and they have lost the ball, where do you want me to go? And I suppose from my own playing career and for where we come, I just find that to be almost a crazy situation because, well, the player in the pitch, see what you need to do. You're an intelligent player, you're a county level footballer. Look at the pitch, see what scenario you're facing. There could be multiple different scenarios. There could be a thing that we don't have cover back. So, right, well, that's the most dangerous place, so that has to be covered. Or you might see that their main danger man is hanging back in a wee pocket just off to the side of play, in which case, if you've spotted that, you need to make sure that he's covered because that's the most dangerous. So me giving him a regimented sort of instruction, I want you always to be in position X. That's great for him because he can run to position X, and if it doesn't work out, he can say, well, I was in position X, that's the manager's fault. But I think a team, and people sort of look at Dublin and think they're so tactically astute and they're so well drilled. I personally don't see that. I see a team of hugely intelligent footballers that are playing the game a lot of what they see it. They have a general framework and they have general principles at play in their heads, but they are intelligent footballers, talented footballers, obviously, playing the game as they see it. And I think giving modern players back, and that's a big step then, that's a brave step. So they always have to be looking at the game that they're playing and then adapting. But if they develop them skills, then there's a great freedom within that, and there's a great sense whenever they're doing it right and they're really talking and they're communicating and they're doing this on the pitch, that becomes a brilliant level of football, and that's the type of football certainly I love. And it takes intelligent footballers to play it, but if you're at county level, you just don't want to be running about and just running to position A or position B, and you're not just an athlete, like you're a footballer first and foremost. So I'm loving working with the team in that regard, and certainly the coaching team I have, we have that regard, but you will make many more mistakes than you'll get right, particularly in this early season. But it's a brilliant opportunity to be working at a level in the game where you have players that you can really work with them type of principles with.
Well, that's what I was going to say. It must be very tempting for new managers coming in your scenario to say, right, what we're going to do is we're going to batten down the hatches and we're going to be super defensive, and teams are going to score 11 to 14 points against us. We might score 5 to 8 against them, but no one's going to blow us out. Whereas what you're asking the players to do is to take the risk, make the run, take individual responsibility, and sometimes it'll be confusing and sometimes they'll make the wrong decision, and that might result in shipping big scores, but it might also result in your forwards having a sense of freedom to try things and for your defenders to join in. So it is the difference between Catenaccio and total football, really.
Yeah, and it's a balance that I'm continually trying to adapt, because we've become so used to really packed defences and really safe looking defences. So as soon as teams start to open up a wee bit, you can feel really, really exposed, which actually, whenever you look at it in the cold light of day, you're actually matching up in a way that would have been very familiar to us maybe 15, 20 years ago. And it's not overly exposed. It's still okay as long as boys are working very hard and trying to put pressure on the passes in and the pressure on defenders and maybe trying to get a wee bit of additional cover there. But because it feels more open than what we've been used to, the players on the pitch feel exposed. And the game, I think, has really changed a lot over the past year or two. And suddenly defenders, there's more space in front of them. And it is a wee bit much more exposed than what they've been used to. Is that the right gamble to take? I don't know. Like we conceded 6 goals over our first 2 games, so I'm hardly one to be talking on that. But having looked at it again, like the mistakes that are there, them goals could have been prevented by better defensive play and better spotting of the danger, and maybe some refereeing decisions within that. But my choice was, right, do we actually just batten down the hatches completely and fall back? And that's still something we're going to chew the fat over this week, to be honest, because that is still the safe option. And the problem is those tactics are exceptionally, they work really well. They are exceptionally effective. So people that argue against them aren't the ones standing on the sideline trying to get the results. There is an effectiveness to them tactics, particularly at a level in the game where maybe there are plenty of mistakes, such as the lower divisions. Like teams will give you turnovers, and them tactics work really effectively on turnover ball. against the likes of Dublin, who make so few mistakes, those tactics have been shown to be less effective. But at most levels in the game, including club level, players will give turnovers. The mistake in decision making or the mistakes in pass execution will be there. And at most levels of the game, outside the likes of Dublin. And so those tactics work really well. And unless there's rule changes to change against them, I don't foresee them becoming any less effective. So they'll always remain there as a choice. It's just, I suppose, I think most players do want to get playing a wee bit more football. I think they do want to be embracing a change. And if you can make that happen, I think they'll come with you. So, as I say, it's early days yet, but there's still plenty of decisions to be made from our end in terms of our playing style, but that's still on the table, shall we say.
Right, well, this is really interesting because it feels like there's a battle for the soul of football going on at the moment, and it's particularly being led by the Division 1 North, where we're seeing shootouts and jinking inside forwards, getting a little bit of space. I'm always reminded of Brendan Devaney coming on and saying defenders can't defend anymore because they're never asked to defend one-on-one. There's always a spare man, there's always a sweeper or a second sweeper giving you help. And so that art of the game has diminished, while at the same time the forwards are getting better because they've less and less space. So the games that we've seen in the league, granted it's such a small sample size after such a long period of time where teams have been out, have been really high scoring, free flowing, particularly in that northern section. Do you feel that this is not a true reflection of how those teams might play in the championship, or is it a change that there's new managers like yourself who are like, you know, the players want to play more interesting football, they're going to be better players, the more fun they're having, we should try and move this thing on again?
It's, I suppose, great question. Like, there's a few things to tease out with that. So one thing is the game changing, absolutely, and I would have said that the game was starting to change a couple of years ago. It's not going to change en masse, but there was major signs that there was change afoot. Just please don't do one thing. Do not assign any of the good football that we're seeing at the minute to new rules, because that is the worst interpretation of facts on the ground I could ever imagine. The new rules are just a shocker from my point of view, but in terms of is the game changing, absolutely. Teams are going a wee bit more offensive. A lot of perhaps the kick-out rule, in fairness, has probably changed things a wee bit. The work around kick-outs, which has been such a central part of the game over the last 10-15 years, and the thing of the high press now and teams pushing up, it means teams are a wee bit more exposed at the back. The soccer tactics of the sort of the Gengen pressing or the high pressing has sort of come in more, and that creates more space behind. As well as that, you've had teams working for several years now on becoming really effective attacking units, really intelligent attacking units, going into blanket defences. So now, whenever they're faced with more open defences, they are ripping them to shreds. And what I would have said for a lot of years, the intelligence and the skill level of the modern player is way above where it was when I was playing the game. And so when you give them players a wee bit of space, they are really making hay, and it's fantastic to watch. It is not good to watch from the sideline. You are continually worried, but certainly the game is in a real state of flux. It's not in a balanced state at the minute. That's brilliant for those watching it. I was chatting you mentioned Devaney, I was chatting to Brendan after the weekend there, and he was up the Donegal match, and he said Monaghan could have had 7 goals, if you know what I mean. And he was speaking to Bonner after the match, and he obviously got his county football bow under Bonner, and he said the difference in him from his first stint in management to this stint in management has been massive. And he says he met Bonner after the match and he thought he'd be very frustrated, and he says actually Bonner just shrugged and says it's just mad game of football, and he was very easy about it. So I think there is a general change. We'll see a slightly truer slant whenever it comes to championship matches. But league position is now so important, including for them top teams. And in a really short section of a league where you have 3-4 games, there's none of them Ulster teams that are not going out trying to win those games. And if they thought winning those games would be better served by a full-on blanket approach, trust me, they'd be doing it now. It's not a matter of not showing their hand. So I do think it is reflective of a change in football, not due to the rules, in my opinion. But the game's very, very open at the minute.
Well, it must be a very exciting time to be cutting your teeth as an inter-county manager then, given that there is so much up for grabs.
Yeah, exciting is one word, Jerry. Again, it's you can choose lots of different adjectives for that. But no, look, I'm thoroughly enjoying it. thinking about the game and trying to tease them things out and trying to get that balance right, to be honest, you just feel a massive sense of responsibility to those players, because they put in such a massive effort. And I suppose coming from the end of the game that I was lucky enough to be involved in, the Antrim end of the game, the Division 3s, the Division 4s, that's sort of the illogical side of the game, if you know what I mean. That's where the effort that them lads are putting in doesn't appear to equate the rewards, if we frame the rewards in the manner certainly that I was aware of, in terms of titles won and glories had, because realistically those type of things aren't within reach now for them players, and yet they're putting in, as I noticed Mickey Hart was saying it about loud, they're putting in the similar type of effort. So as a manager, you feel a huge sense of responsibility and loyalty to them boys, that there is some sense of development and that they get good days on a football pitch. And it's framing that in a sense of, like, the sense that them lads are playing for their families and their clubs is massive, and maybe stronger there than it was that I sensed among the top teams. The sense that they're there just to do whatever they can to raise the level a wee bit. And that's a massively humbling thing for me. And again, you sense a real responsibility to give them lads everything that I personally can, and hope that in some way is good enough, that you can create a good enough setup around them between myself and the rest of the management team. So excitement, absolutely, I'm enjoying the challenge, but I owe it to these boys in terms of the level that they're putting in to try and get the results. And we've got a couple of lucky ones so far. But we've now got a wee shot at promotion, and I would just love for them to be able to get that, because that's one wee step for them, and I think it's a step they've deserved for a number of years and have been unlucky, and it's a step we're tantalising and close to now, but they know themselves that it's the same as our 1 point wins that we've had two to date of. The difference between getting close to the line and getting over the line is just massive. So it's an interesting time for me personally, plenty of learning happening, but it's all about the players again, and hopefully we can keep making the progress we've made to date.
Well, listen, we wish you the very best of luck. It's always great to talk to you. Thanks a million. Keep up the good work.
Thanks, Jerry. Thanks.
And Enda McGinley giving us some thoughts there about what life is like at the moment at the coalface, and also I think that's really interesting stuff about the Ulster Football Championship and the style of play that the game is generally espousing at the moment. If you've got a view, we'd love to hear it. You can drop a comment on the YouTube channel, or of course you can text us on 0879 180 180. That's the WhatsApp number as well. OTB AM live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Here's what's coming up on OTB Sports Radio today. It is when the East Coast was ruling the West Coast. It's Wexford 56 with Ned Wheeler and Art Foley, the OG in that beef. Dadcast at 3. Our Legends interview is Paddy Bonner, who has been welcomed back into the fold. It was kind of a subplot at the weekend. He is one of the non-football people in the independent directors, who it turns out is a football person, and I think that might have been part of the easing of that whole stress at the FAI board. But a Legends interview at 4 o'clock today with Paddy Bonner, and OTB Gold is Joe Malloy meeting Ruby Walsh. Tonight, Roland Lazenby on the 25th anniversary of the Chicago Bulls' record-breaking season, and Dan McDonnell on Stephen Kenny's Ireland squad. That is the radio show tonight, which you can hear on OTB Sports Radio. We're going to be back talking Gaelic football after these.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
Our exclusive OTB Sports UEFA Champions League final preview show,
in partnership with Pepsi Max, takes place this Thursday, May 27th. We'll be joined by Manchester City and Chelsea legend Sean Wright-Phillips. Manchester United hero Teddy Sheringham will relive that night in Barcelona, and we'll get the thoughts of Republic of Ireland's two-time MVP winner Denise O'Sullivan.
You must be registered for the night to see the live show. Get your tickets on otbsports.com/events.
Pepsi Max, maximum taste, no sugar, hashtag for the love of it.
First up, a Go Loud original from News Talk.
Get all the news you need to start your day with First Up, the podcast that brings you stories, analysis and interviews with the top newsmakers. First Up, available each weekday morning from 7 a.m. on Go Loud.
Subscribe to this podcast for free on the Go Loud app.
OTB AM
with Gillette. Put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
I think sometimes you can see at early stages probably in a project what's glaringly obvious, and I felt that mind you, the conditions were 33 degrees.
Right.
I don't think, you know what I mean, they were I was extremely harsh to pick out Winnie Antonio, Lopetti and Will, because they're all minimum 130 kilograms, and on a day like that, you can be sure that they're fast twitch fibre athletes. They're short spurts, they're brilliant at that, but there was a lot of up and back the pitches. So
right, okay.
I think the positive thing for me was the way that Will took that, because that could have been a turning point with he doesn't really know what he's talking about. It's easy to blame fitness because, I mean, our game plan wasn't anywhere near where it is nowadays. But I just, he's changed a lot, and it's a pleasure being around people as motivated as him.
Well, he's had quite the season. And as an aside, when you make a pop like that in the dressing room, you're not fit enough, would you go to the trouble of checking stats and checking meters covered, or would you just base it on your eye? I just know to look at you're not fit. When it's a risky enough thing, as you said, to have a pop at Skelton. Like, you want to come armed, or did you just say, I know looking at you're not fit?
No, it was you're making it out that this is quite calm and measured. I'd lost the plot in the changing room.
Okay,
so
right.
It's like I have to give you a bit of context where you're, you know what I mean? But I've only done, that was probably, I've done it a few times, but that was one of the times where you're trying to install. It was probably day 3 or match day 3 of the top 14 season.
Right.
And you could see that this team has potential, but if we want to be serious, we need to prioritise getting some of our forwards fitter. But they've taken it on really well, Joe. Like, I can't speak more highly of them. You look at what they did in the Leinster game, and we were still going hard at 14 men at the end. So that's, I think, mentally and physically, that really pleases me.
The hairdryer Ron O'Gara style, as detailed on the Monday Night Rugby last night with Ron O'Gara in the aftermath of their unfortunate defeat at the weekend. You can get that full interview on the OTB Sports app. Subscribe to the rugby feed for our podcast there, or wherever you get your podcasts indeed, and you can reminder to rate us on iTunes and share that and leave comments as well, and we'll get to those comments eventually. So that good stuff. We'll play you the full thing in a couple of minutes' time as well. Now, we want to talk about Gaelic football. We've had Enda McGinley on there, the Antrim manager. I just want to make one point about this, Eoin, before we get into... I think that the best hope that the so-called weaker counties have is that stuff like what's going on in Antrim happens, where you've got somebody as articulate as Enda McGinley and as highly regarded, and then you've got stuff going on in Clare where you have a management team there that has dragged them to the brink of promotion in Division 1 over a period of time. It's these kind of... There are different approaches that counties need to take. Some need somebody to come in and say, this is how you do things, and Antrim GAA probably needed somebody like that. Clare, it seems like you needed somebody who understands the nuances and had the connection with some of the lads who were on the hurling team as well, obviously, and understands a way to navigate through the politics of that. That's the hope that these counties must have, that they can get to some level where they will be able to break into Division 1 and become a Division 1 team over a period of time, and then eventually start contending.
Yeah, like if every county had a manager the quality of Colm Collins, I think they'd all be going the right direction. From what we've heard from Enda McGinley, 2 games in, things sound pretty positive that he's going to go pretty far, I'd say, in this whole management business. Like, what is interesting is, like, when you put it to Enda, this idea of Catenaccio versus total football, I sort of like that. I sort of like the sort of contrast in styles that we sometimes get. I don't like when it is like banging your head off against a brick wall, like some counties have had the experience of against Dublin or other Division 1 counties at times, where it's like, right, we're up against a big team, automatically we have to play more defensive football, or we automatically have to come with bodies back behind the ball. That's not what I like, and I don't think any of the public like that when it's kind of mindless and doesn't actually make all that much sense. We want to see the smaller counties have a better chance of beating the bigger counties, the higher division counties. And if that makes more sense in a way that can be done with attractive, free-flowing football, that's great for all. But maybe it doesn't suit everybody. Maybe it doesn't suit going up against Donegal and Tyrone as much as it would suit going up against the Mayo, for example. And it is those mixes of styles which make GAA so fascinating and the modern intricacies of Gaelic football so interesting. The problem is everybody was bringing bodies behind the ball and just being like, blanket defence, so that person's doing it, we all have to start doing it.
Well, it was a brain dead approach to tactics. It was like, I see somebody do something, I'm going to do the same thing, and I can actually get the same rewards from it. I think also there was a terrible misunderstanding of the attacking play that McGuinness had. I've gone back and watched those games, particularly the Kildare games, you would frequently see the cornerbacks are up in the opposition 21-yard line. Like, there was elements of that were incredibly progressive when it came to an offensive style. It's just that it took him a while to work that out, but he was continuously trying to evolve and change things, whereas loads of other managers went, we're just going to be defensive and that's all there is to it. We're going to try and win a slogfest, hope that it rains and then we get a penalty and that we'll win 1-8 to 9 points or 1-8 to 10 points. And that killed the game for a little while. And it's the evolution in the tactical thinking that has got us to this point, as opposed to any of the interfering and the rule changes that has happened. I absolutely agree with that.
Yeah, it did. Like, I'm not sure if anybody said that the advanced mark is the reason why Gaelic football's got good this year, but Enda McGinley definitely wouldn't go along with that if anybody was saying it. Like, it is interesting. Look, those two staging points in the mid-2000s, or it was the early 2000s, first of all, Jim McGuinness, and then the evolution within the Jim McGuinness game plan, and then it's almost Dublin around 2016, 2017. Well, actually, no, post-2014, really, when they start to evolve a little bit, and there is just a far more advanced attacking game plan than we'd ever seen, which comes with possession, which comes with breaking down that blanket. Those are the two developments, and one is a reaction to the other.
Yeah, the Dubs basketball, keeping up possession, only shooting from an area where the high percentages is going to be. I remember it being very controversial that at one point Kieran McGeeney had told somebody in the Kildare team, you're not allowed to shoot because your shooting stats are terrible, so don't shoot, give it to somebody who's a good. And it's like, imagine telling somebody they can't shoot. And it's like, well, is he a good shooter? Is he going to score every time he shoots? Should we give it to somebody who is a good shooter?
Or McGeeney's probably saying to that person as well, like, don't shoot when you get the ball because you're a wing forward and you're going to be in and around the 45-metre line. Like, if you get the ball 20 metres out and there's nobody around you, of course you shoot. Like, those things are often retold in a very black and white way.
It's true, but you are from Kerry, where everybody can kick the ball over from 20, and we just have 30 years of lads missing from the 20 against the Dubs in big moments. So let's move on. Right, a reminder, OTB AM live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. So you were in Thurles at the weekend for another draw.
Another draw.
Yeah. There were a couple of key players, I think, that I don't know that much about. Young O'Connor and Young Moynihan, that Tommy's been banging on about.
Yeah.
So what's the crack with Diarmuid O'Connor? Who is he? Is he the future already? And what do we need to know about him? Give us our 90-second cheat sheet.
I think we're not going to play the timer for this one, but I think that I absolutely think that Diarmuid O'Connor is the future. He is the future because Mark O'Connor doesn't exist in the Kerry sphere anymore. He was to be the future, and Diarmuid O'Connor was also part of those minor teams and had just shown everything as an underage footballer. The athleticism, the fielding, the point taking, the ability to break forward and good in the tackle. He had it all, and his progress to the starting team hasn't been that slow. He's been in and around the panel now for a couple of years. Last year was going to be, it looked like, a big year for him, and obviously the championship ended prematurely for Kerry. A couple of weeks ago I said that he'd be one of a handful of Kerry people to make a big statement this year, to have a really big season and to potentially win an All-Star this year. And an uncle of mine reminded me that after week one he wasn't even picked to start the first league game for Kerry, so I was kind of like eating humble pie. Just by pure coincidence this week then Jack Barry gets injured and Diarmuid O'Connor has to start. Like, I think I probably had O'Connor ahead of Jack Barry in the pecking order anyway. That's not the way Peter Keane sees it. He may have to rethink that after his performance against Dublin on Sunday, because I thought he was absolutely brilliant. The future for Kerry in 3 years' time, max, will be Barry and O'Connor in midfield. The question just surrounds David Moran and what games he'll be picked for Kerry next season. I think he's still first choice midfielder, but I think once he comes up against the athleticism of the Dublin midfield, he struggles. Diarmuid O'Connor has no such struggles, and as we've seen, Jack Barry actually likes playing against Dublin. He actually has had all of his best games in the Kerry shirt against Dublin, so I wouldn't be surprised that if this is a match-up later on this summer, that we actually see the two young men from the same club, from the Gael in Tralee, playing together in that midfield, and O'Connor just has the potential to be absolutely awesome.
Okay, so O'Connor obviously started the All-Ireland final replay.
Yeah.
Yeah. The last season was supposed to be the year where we would have seen 5-6 games, him nail down a place. then play in summertime, and that's the physique, and that's that second season as a starter where we get to see his evolution. That hasn't happened, and so therefore that's what we're seeing now, you hope.
Yeah, like I thought last year was going to be his massive breakout year. Like, it's interesting, I don't have the team in front of me, but from that replay, I do think it was himself, Barry and Moran all started in that game. So this was when Peter Keane was playing a third midfielder in the half-forward line. Now, he's moved away from that this year, but it's not to say that he won't go back to it if they play Dublin again, because I think what we've now seen is that you can have a game plan for 30 counties around Ireland. You need to have a different game plan for Dublin. Like, they are still a standard setter. They are clearly the best team in the country. And as we saw on Sunday, the shift from Kerry in the second half, there had to have been a shift. There just couldn't have been the same game plan for the scores that changed so dramatically. That shift was probably more towards what Kerry would have done in 2019 as opposed to how they had lined up against Galway, for example.
Yeah, okay. All right, so that's the story with the Kerry, Diarmuid O'Connor. What's the story at Moynihan? Where will he play? How important a role is he going to be? And, in that pecking order of importance at the moment? Because it seems like there's been a couple of games now where you're like, hang on a second. This is another guy who looks pretty special. Yeah,
this guy's been around for a little bit longer again. Another absolutely amazing player from those minor teams who's come through, and it seems like Kerry have this conveyor belt of 5'10", stocky half forwards who are great soldiers of the ball and great at just that running game that had been part of fairly pragmatic football over the last 3 or 4 years. The problem with a lot of those players for Kerry is that they either weren't able to show how well they were able to take a score, or they simply just weren't that great at taking the score. That seems to be the big thing that he has added over the first couple of games of this league, is his ability to take a score, and his final product seems a lot better. He's going to play in the half forwards. He has the engine that somebody like, say, Paul Ganey perhaps doesn't have, and that's why he will be a banker in this Kerry team for as long as he is hopefully in form, and as long as he stays fit all year long. I thought he was just absolutely brilliant on Sunday, and outside of David Clifford, Kerry's best player over the first couple of weeks. The question is then, what do you do with the other spot in the half-forward line? Paul Ganey has been getting that jersey for the first couple of days, but as Paddy Andrews was saying after the game on Sunday, it's hard to see a world where he continues to play there. He has to really be an inside forward. That's how you get the most out of Paul Ganey. Moynihan is the prototype perfect half-forward in the modern game, and with added space being seen so far this year in the league, he is absolutely thriving into it, because he can run the ball, but if you give him a bit of space, he can also kick into that space, and that lovely bounce pass in front of David Clifford or whoever's inside. All of a sudden, they have depth in the forward line, and a combination of pace and power and high technical ability. Yeah, like that, and a little bit more depth. Like Ronan Buckley came on at the weekend. He will be another important player for Kerry coming down the home stretch of a game that goes 75 to 80 minutes in the championship. So I think that depth is still yet to be fully tested. Stephen O'Brien coming back was a massive addition, and of course the defence is something that's going to be questioned over the next little while as well. But I just think Kerry went naively man to man at times on Sunday, to the point that they surely can't do that again. Yeah, or you can work out some of those patterns of play that the Dubs have that you kind of have to see in real time to go, oh, I see what you did there to me again and again and again, and next time they get to deal with that. We'll talk more about that, obviously, plenty of time. OTB AM live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, give me the confidence to tackle the day ahead. We're live from 7:30 tomorrow. We've got rugby with Keith Wood, football with Daniel Harris, and much more besides as well. Right now, here's Darran O'Sullivan talking Kerry last night, and Paddy Andrews at Semple Stadium with Eoin. Enjoy.
Now you're welcome, Max. So we'll take a glance at the weekend's football. In particular, Dublin-Kerry caught the eye. Dublin 4-9, Kerry 1-18. Third time in the last 4 meetings between this pair that there's been a draw. Happy to say All-Ireland winner with Kerry. Darran O'Sullivan is on the line. Hi, Darran.
Hey, Joe. Thanks for having me.
No, great to have you with us. So what did you make of it in broad terms?
Jeez, where to start? I suppose the first half was everything you were fearing as a Kerry fan, and the second half was everything you'd be hoping that they'd bring to the table this year. You know, they had a great fight. They didn't back down. They just kept chipping away. They backed themselves. I suppose I'm coming away with mixed feelings. It was great. 118 any day of the week is brilliant, but it was just disappointing to see the goals that we coughed up in the first half. They were very soft and easily avoided, to be honest.
Yeah, that was the thing. Even 2 of the goals, very similar positions, left-hand side of the pitch, and like 3v3, numbered up fine and Dublin just time a run and pop it into space in behind one of the men, and it's that simple. And it probably shouldn't be that simple either. Someone should be coming into cover and stop that at source, or you fellas have to go with the runners better.
Yeah, look, I suppose when you're in that position and you have a fella kind of going towards the corner flag, there's no need to be trying to get out in front of him. Sometimes you just have to leave him win it, and I don't know, were they trying to anticipate the pass so they could go in and put a hand in or what, but it was way too easy. And the fact that he could run into open space going in on goal, look, I think that's one of the issues Kerry have had over a number of years, that area in front of goal seems to be left open. We got to let that very early in the game when I think it was Scully got through and put the ball across and they hit the post. We just didn't learn our lesson. It was just, I don't know, were we trying to be more attack-minded in terms of the defence and getting the hand in all the time and not leaving the win-handy ball, and they got caught. But to get caught twice is it's poor. So there'll be a bit of head scratching, I think, going on this week in training. And I think the fact that they're safe, I'd be disappointed, to be honest, if they didn't reshuffle the back line just to give a few new lads a go and see how they get on. Because I think if you're still making the same mistakes that you've been making for the last couple of years, you do need to mix it up a bit.
Because last week when we spoke, one of the things you were happiest about on the back of the Galway performance was a sense now that there was a structure about the Kerry defence. So I guess that early faith maybe was dismantled. That might be one of the reasons you're particularly disappointed.
Yeah, that was it. No, obviously, look, I suppose the performance against Galway was brilliant, but I think everyone down here knew that Galway weren't at the race that day, and look, it looked a bit better than it was. Now, there were times during the game where I thought, yeah, we're set up well, and I don't know whether it's a concentration thing or a lack of spatial awareness that we were just switching off. And look, if you switch off for a split second against Dublin, they're the best in the business at actually making you pay, and they did that. So at times, like it was a funny one at times, because Dublin only kicked, they take the goals out of it. They didn't kick a lot. They actually were a lot more wasteful than I've probably ever seen them, and they actually kicked a lot of high kind of aimless balls in. I know they got a goal from one of them, but a lot of their play on the weekend wasn't very Dublin-like. So you think maybe that was down to Kerry putting pressure on, and maybe it was down to Kerry working hard. But I think if you can cut out the lapses in concentration, they'll be well on their way. But I'm not sure what it is, to be honest. If I go through the players individually, they're all super footballers, very good, very talented. It just seems to be a cohesion thing. I heard Paul Flynn talking recently about the Dublin backs, and he said, obviously, they're all well able to mark one-on-one, man-on-man. He goes, but the structure they have in place means they don't have to do it very often.
Yes.
And unfortunately, I think Kerry's structure in the backs just isn't there yet, and they're probably having to go one-on-one more often than anyone would like.
And so, look, to be fair, if you put out one fire, Dublin will start another one elsewhere. On that understanding, though, but to hone in on those two goals where they were similar-ish, and Kerry were numbered up okay, and it was just as I said, a little hand pass over the top and a great run in behind, and suddenly there's nobody there. It's a free run at goal. I mean, I'm sure as a forward, that's the dream scenario for you, that you can make a little dart in behind and suddenly it's open season in front of you. So you want somebody there. Why isn't somebody there? I would have thought that's a numbers issue whereby they're off marking other people. Like, is it that you're saying, well, there needs to be a sweeper in there for those moments, or what's the easy or obvious solution?
No, I think it's like, for me, it's just awareness. Where's the danger? And the danger is always in the middle of the goal.
Yeah.
I think we had bodies out in around the arc, around the 30-yard line, kind of looking to see what their runners, but there was nobody aware of somebody slipping in behind someone. Maybe, I don't know what is that from. Maybe people just don't expect these silly errors to happen. That's all it was. It was a silly error. It was a lack of concentration, switching off for a split second. But it's for me, it's awareness. Where's the danger? And with Dublin, it's goals. You take the goals out of it, you're going to take an awful lot out of them. And like that, we stopped them kicking points quite well. We took that area around the D really well, but it was behind the man. You know, I always think back to even soccer with Paul Scholes. He was always looking over his shoulder. He always knew what was around him. And I know it's a different game, different positions, but maybe just something like that, getting fellas in the habit of looking around. That's all it is, a quick glimpse around. Geez, the middle is wide open and a bit of communication, and you cut a lot of that out.
Yeah. So I guess the optimistic view if you were looking at this from a Kerry perspective, would be, well, the high punt in for the Con goal. I think it was Paul Murphy got caught out.
Murphy, yeah.
Yeah, write that off.
Yeah.
That's one of those things, that's not going to happen again. And then if we get on top of those moments with the 2 goals where you're 3v3, I mean, eliminate them. Suddenly Dublin are down to 1-9 here. And not, when was the last time Dublin kicked 9 points in a match? You could you could spin it around in a positive way, or you could say, geez, like we've been talking about these issues in defence for a long time.
Yeah, so look, I suppose, like any day, I suppose you come out of it with a draw against Dublin, you kick 118. There are positives there.
Sure.
And when you look at how poor some of the goals were, you're saying, geez, we surely won't make them mistakes again. And there's definitely stuff to work on. But the other side of it is Dublin weren't at the races either. Like Kieran Kilkenny, normally so reliable, had a couple of very handy wides, which is like him as well. So like it's hard to take anything from it, to be honest. The positive is we tightened up an awful lot in the second half. I think it was 1, 2 or 3, and the penalty was one of them in the second half they conceded, which is good, and great character like that. There was no major turning point. They just kept going. They just didn't give up. It was just chipping away at the points, and obviously then Stephen O'Brien came on and made an impact and won a penalty. So I think the fact that they kept going, they deserved something from it. They were a lot tighter in the second half, which was great to see, a lot hungrier. So there were positives, but I think at the same time, I think both teams are a bit below par, and so there'll be a lot more to come from both of them.
Yeah, more tempo was Peter Keane's verdict on why it did improve in the second half. Kerry definitely got on top in the third quarter in particular. They won that 6 points to 1. As you said, maybe a bit less passive. Got on top of the Dublin kick out quite well. Again, it's really hard to read into that. Is this some brilliant tactical shift that they can take into an All-Ireland final, or is it just, this is the league and you up-tempo a bit, you get maybe a bit more reward than you might get in a few months' time?
Yeah, to be honest, I don't think you take too much away. And
right.
If you were going into an All-Ireland final, you look at it, to be honest. I think the fact is, like that, you move the ball quickly and you don't give them a chance to get their bodies back, and you get a chance to take players on a bit more one-on-one, which they don't like no defenders do. And I think Dublin are one of the best at, if you slow down, they will get bodies back, and they will hunt you down in 2s and 3s as good as any team. But if you move it fast, it's very hard to get bodies back. I think Kerry did that a lot quicker. They were slicker on the ball, and they were kick passing it a lot more accurately in the second half. So that all helped, and they were getting into the danger zone. And look, I think everyone football fan knows we have the forwards to cause anyone trouble. It's about getting the ball up to them as quickly as possible.
I know, it's amazing really. Michael Fitzsimon's brilliant man marker, and you think he's doing an okay job on Clifford, and then you look and you realise Clifford's kicked 5 from play, 1-6 in total, had an incredible game really. The other thing which is really, it's not a new thing, I think it had emerged already, but the more you watch Clifford, and I sort of made this mistake with you, and I make this mistake with Kerry forwards in particular, because real Rolls Royce footballers, you kind of underestimate just how spiky they are and what winners they are. Just Clifford's got real needle in him, doesn't he? Like off the ball, he's happy to get in someone's face. He's a winner. He's not just out here and look at my technique and look at me floating over points. Like, he kind of likes a bit of dirty in there as well. Which is
probably my favourite part about it, to be honest. It's I love seeing it. Look, that's what he is. He's not he is. He's like an artist on the ball, but that's not what he is. Like, he's so much more than that. And I think you have to be, because otherwise, if I'm a defender and going to mark him, I'm looking at this fella going, how would you bully this fella? He's 6 foot plus. He's getting stronger every week. He has all the skills in the world, and he has no problem going face to face with a fella, and he's going to look after himself just fine. And I think most of the best players who played the game had that spikiness to them. I think the fellas who were lacking that bit of spikiness were always maybe a level below, because they were easier to get at. So it was good to see those fellas trying to get in his face and stuff. And like that, he had a great game. He kicked 1-6, but he easily could have had 1-10 or 11. The left leg wasn't working as well as it normally does, but the right leg was on fire. So like that's a good sign of him. He kept chipping away. Like that, 1-6 and great game. But I've seen him play a lot better, and he just kept the head up, and I think it was a great sign of him.
Yeah, he's not going to be bullied. It was interesting watching Brian Fenton sort of play higher up the pitch. So Mick Galvin was asked about this, and he was saying it's quite fluid with Brian. We just wanted to try and get him into different positions, ask different questions of the opposition. Nothing really too much to read into it, just trying out things at this time of the year. So again, that would really underline your point that this time of the year, be wary of reading too much into anything we're seeing right now. Like I would put it to you, because Fenton is just so awesome, frankly. There is no chance come summertime he won't be lining out in midfield and told to go and do his thing. There's no, I can't imagine a possibility whereby they're thinking of some kind of switch with Fenton's positioning.
No, look, there's no way you have a player like that. How many seasons is it now he hasn't lost the game in Championship and he's been dominating midfield? You're not going to move that. But that's what the league is all about this year. It's trying out things just in case. Like, I don't think they'll ever start him outside midfield, but if he takes a knock and they don't want to take him off, it might be case, look, he can do a job somewhere else and he mightn't have the same mileage to cover. So that's what it's about. It's about trying, like we've been playing Paul Gainey at number 12 for the last 2 games. Just about mixing things up, keeping things fresh and trying to find as many different options throughout this league as they can. Yeah.
I was listening to Paddy Andrews after the game, and in fact I'll play a clip later on of Andrews talking about who partners Fenton at midfield. But on Gainey, he was talking to Eoin Sheahan, and he was saying that's not the way to nurse Gainey back to form, sticking him out there at number 12. Like, he's an inside forward, get him back to form in his best position. That's the best way to do it. Where is Gainey in his career right now for you?
See, for me, it wasn't about nursing him back to form because he hasn't played, so he couldn't have any form anyway. I thought it was a good call initially, was because I felt he could get mileage into the legs, give minutes into the legs, and I think if he was in the full forward line, it's very sharp, fast, sudden movements in the full forward line, and I think the body could break down doing that, whereas I felt putting him out wing forward, he could be an option for kick out. He'd get up good mileage out there. He works hard. He's a good tackler, and it was a good way of getting him back into. Whereas I think if he was in the full forward line for the first game or two, like everyone's 6 months, but Paul didn't play with Kerry last year, obviously, because it was a short season, whatever, and he was injured then for Dingle for a good bit. So he's very little football played. So I can see what Paddy's saying. If it was a form issue, but it's more of a fitness thing, as far as I can see. It's getting the minutes and the mileage into the legs again, and then the sharpness will come. I genuinely felt that if he'd started in the full forward line where they have a lot of options, he'd have been pushing it. There's a lot of sharp twisting and turning, and that's when the body might break it down.
On Dublin at midfield, so Paddy Andrews talking after the game and talking about Fenton's positioning, he was saying, like, Tom Lahiff we've seen in the last 2 games being trialled there. Obviously Michael Darran-McCauley has retired. James McCarthy has been in the half-back line. Jack McCaffrey not around anymore. So Andrews was of the opinion, have a listen here, that there definitely is a vacancy at midfield as to who is going to partner Brian Fenton. Have a listen.
And then what about Lahiff? Is he edging towards being the partner for Fenton in midfield?
It's hard to know. That is, like I say, the Dublin team, you can probably name 12 or 13 of their starters straight off the bat. There is a gap for someone to play midfield with Brian Fenton, particularly with Michael Darran-McCauley stepping away. James McCarthy has gone in there and played in the past. James is probably more comfortable himself playing in the half-back line as well. There does seem to be a spot beside Fenton, and ultimately you want Brian Fenton if you're Dublin. Marauding forward, he's scoring 3-4 points a game. Whoever plays in that role beside him is going to be more of a defensive style of player. I thought Tom did quite well today, but I do think that it's probably a position that's up for grabs, and Dublin are trying out 2 or 3 different midfielders. I know they have new players in the squad as well, but that's definitely an area where Dublin are probably looking for someone to put their hand up and say, I'm going to be Brian Fenton's partner, let him off, and I suppose do the fancier stuff. Well, you're going to be in there grafting and trying to give Dublin a platform.
Yeah, be interesting to see those new players he mentions coming through. Any obvious candidate in your book?
I suppose like that, everyone, I would have been thinking James McCarthy as well, but I suppose with the players he's mentioned, missing John Small, going off with what looked like a hamstring injury, you never know what a hamstring, how long it's going to be. Maybe they'll want his presence back in the backs, but it's a difficult one now. To be fair, I wouldn't know much about the new guys coming into the panel. The Hiff has done all right a bit. I've seen him. But it could be interesting like that. Not many teams who throw the ball too much. So do you need 2 big men there? Probably not. So there could be maybe an unusual call to go there. Maybe like Paddy said, someone defensive that will kind of sit and hold and leave Brian do the attacking part of his game, which is so effective for them.
Yeah. to be fair, you could put me alongside Brian Fenton, they'd probably win midfield as well. You know, it's you're off to a good start. I guess if things get desperate,
He's that good.
if things get desperate, I mean, McCarthy can go in there. You know, there's always that as well. It's not a chronic issue. It's just an interesting one.
Yeah, I think, you know what, they get away with it for 90% of the games because most teams drop a couple of forwards back anyway. But it is the games now against, let's say, Donegal or Kerry, where you think they will be playing 5 and 6 forwards up there, that you'll need as many of your better defenders back there. So that's where they'll probably come up against it. But like that, it's probably good for Dublin too to have these spaces up for grabs as well. It keeps everyone on their toes as well. And that just shows that the competition is there. And if a team is kind of set in stone, it gets a bit stale. So that's ominous signs for the rest of the teams around. It's going to be good competition, fellas chomping at the bit.
They were relatively concerned about John Small, waiting to see the results of his scan, and the word from yesterday was Cluxton will come back towards the end of the league, and similarly Dean Rock will come back towards the end of the league. Who are Kerry waiting on? Are there any big guns I'm not thinking of to come back in and make a big difference, or was that largely Kerry at their best yesterday?
More or less, Tom Sullivan into the backs. I imagine, obviously, the goalie situation, I'm not sure what's going on there.
Yeah.
More or less, that's it. Stephen O'Brien's back getting games and stuff. James Donoghue, not sure where he's at or if he can hit the form that we'd hope that he'd hit. But other than that, they're keeping the injuries fairly low key. I haven't really heard a whole pile, but as far as I can see, bar probably Tom O'Sullivan to come in, the goalie situation, I think that's more or less Kerry's strongest team or strongest squad.
So sum this up for us then. Based on yesterday, and it's pretty clear you're definitely wary of reading too much into much of yesterday. Your optimism from a Kerry perspective that come championship time, maybe in an All-Ireland final when these two meet, what is that gap at the moment between the two sides?
I think the gap is narrowing, and I think the fact that Kerry work hard for so many goals the weekend is a good thing.
Right.
Not great to see, but it's better to see it now than later on down the line. I just think that the weekend highlighted, even a below par Dublin, how much they can hurt you. So you can do an awful lot right, and if you switch off or you're not aware of your surroundings, you're gone. It's a goal. They will punish you, and they should have punished us more in the first half. So I think the gap is narrowing. Can we narrow it enough in the next couple of weeks? But I do think Dublin will be wary of Kerry going forward as well. And I think the fact that we kicked 118 could have kicked a lot more. The goal that was disallowed for the advantage rule. Obviously the forwards were kicking a lot of wides. Both teams were actually kicking a lot of wides, so there could have been a lot of other scores. I think defensively that would worry Dublin as well.
Yeah, like if the mark is to get to 22, 23 points to beat this Dublin team, Kerry that won't freak Kerry out the way it would most sides.
No, I don't think so. Like that, David and Sean have started the season really well. I think Darran Moynihan's been excellent, and like that, Killian Spillane, like 22 points. I think Kerry would go out there and expect to be kicking around that most games, to be fair, and hopefully creating a few more goal chances. So, no, look, it's positive for the first two league games, so we can't complain too much.
Okay, very good. Darren Sullivan, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Cheers, thanks guys.
All right, Paddy. Initial thoughts on that game? Like, what a cracking finish.
Yeah, there was a big build-up coming into the game. Obviously, two of the most probably exciting sets of forwards on display, particularly after the performances last weekend, and it didn't disappoint. Initially, Dublin, they did go into a 7-point lead in the second half, and normally from that position we've seen them being so composed and closing games out. But to be fair to Kerry, far more urgency, far more energy in the second half, and probably on the basis of that second half performance, they probably deserved the draw in the end.
Was that it? Was that the key difference, that Kerry were just a little more urgent in the third quarter?
I think it was definitely that, and probably Dublin probably took the foot off the gas a little bit as well. Like, they were lethal in the first half. Conor O'Callaghan and Kieran Kilkenny were causing all sorts of trouble in the Kerry full back line. Like, Dublin only scored 1-3 in the second half. 2 points from play, and Cormac Costello's penalty as well. So they weren't as sharp up front probably in the second half, but Kerry's energy in terms of pushing up on Evan Comfort's kickouts, they started turning the Dublin defenders over, coming out of defence. that was a huge thing. That energy and that pace brought into the game, and that's Kerry were just so passive in the first half, and you cannot play that way against Dublin and hope to be successful.
I do want to come to that in just a moment, but first of all, Costello, Con, Paddy Small, what a full forward line.
Yeah, like that's the challenge. And look, if you're on the Kerry side, if you're analysing their game, you would look and say probably their full back line is an area that teams are going to try and target. And you could see that in the first half. Conor Callahan, Kieran Kilkenny was switching in with Cormac Costello. Paddy Small scored 3 points from play. And that's still outside. Dublin did have 7 wides in the first half, which is very, very unlikely. But once they clicked into gear, particularly that second quarter, like Kerry didn't score for 15 minutes, and Dublin were just letting the ball in long to Conor Callahan. He scored 2 goals, hit the post with another one, and had a save from Kieran Fitzgibbon. So he easily could have had 4 goals. When those guys are on song, that is what makes Dublin probably the top team, and very hard to stop if the ball is with Conor Callahan and Kieran Kilkenny.
And the incredible thing about it was that they were slowing the play down 4 or 5 minutes. They'd have the ball, goal chance. What don't you want to see as a Dublin player when you are moving the ball from wing to wing in those situations?
From Dublin's point of view, and that was, I suppose, the beauty of the performance in the first half, when Kerry brought guys back and they had 12 or 13 players behind the ball, Dublin would still keep the ball for 3 or 4 minutes. It comes to Niall Scully, it comes to Brian Fenton, they work the ball over and back. And to be fair, we've seen that with Conor Callahan's goal. Dublin had the ball for 3 minutes, worked the ball into the corner to Kieran Kilkenny, who eventually got Conor Callahan at the end of it. All of a sudden, Kerry tried to push out and play man on man, and Dublin recognised it straight away, and Niall Scully puts a 60-yard kick pass in and takes out the whole Kerry defence and gets Con one-on-one for his second goal. So Dublin have the ability and they have the experience of playing this style of play over the last 5 or 6 years, where if they need to be patient on the ball, they can do it. But on the flip side, if they see space and it's one-on-one, they will get the ball to Conor Callahan and Kieran Kilkenny. And that was the beauty, I suppose, in the first half, and they had Kerry in all sorts of trouble playing that way.
What was Brian Fenton's role today?
He seemed to play a little bit further up the pitch. It was interesting. I think it was probably a blow to Kerry that Jack Barry wasn't able to play. They've had some great battles, Jack Barry and Fenton, over the last number of years. You know, he is such a key player for Dublin. He's so key in their transition. Probably a quiet enough day by such as high standards. The same with Kieran Kilkenny, and that probably, you know, Dublin would have wanted him to get on the ball a little bit more, particularly in the second half, when, like I say, when Kerry were starting to get on top. But it shows if Kerry can get a plan for Brian Fenton and try and tie him up, it does take a huge thing away from Dublin going forward. So interesting from Dublin, probably trying something a little bit different, playing Fenton a little bit further up the pitch.
Do Kerry revert to a sweeper at this point? Do they revert to an extra man in defence if they come up against that Dublin attack again later in the summer?
It's very difficult for Peter Keane, and I don't envy him. I mean, last year he tried to play a probably more defensive style of play. He had Brian O'Buglock playing in the wing forward position and dropping back. That really didn't work for him, obviously. They were beaten by Cork, and the reaction from Kerry supporters and within the Kerry camp would have been that they need to go back and play a more traditional style and play 6 forwards up the pitch. They tried to do that today. But on the flip side, if you're playing man-on-man in your defence, they've got to have the backs that are capable of dealing with Dublin's key forwards. And in the first half, they really weren't able to do that. So it is such a difficult thing for Peter Keane, finding that balance between playing, OK, we want to let our top forwards off the leash and play that traditional style of Kerry football on the front attacking, but if they leave their full back line one-on-one, it is an area where you can see them struggling, definitely.
That could be the difference down the line as well, and it should have been the difference maybe from Dublin's perspective today, is that Dublin are also marking man-to-man. They're also taking on David Clifford man-to-man. The thing is, Kerry are converting those chances with points. Dublin are creating a multitude of goal chances. Yeah,
and like I say, that's probably the experience that Dublin have. If you were playing in that Dublin front back line and you see Sean McMahon today coming in, kind of a newcomer, did really, really well on Killian Spillane in the first half. Killian Spillane was really strong for Kerry last week, scoring 4 points, taken off at half-time. If you're playing in the Dublin backline, you are expected to be able to mark man-to-man. If there's a sweeper or there's an extra man back, that's a bonus. But you see Michael Fitzsimon's arguably the best cornerback in the game. He's marking David Clifford and he has to deal with himself. And that's the challenge, and that's the standard Dublin play at, and that's what they demanded of their backs. Fitzsimon's actually, I thought, did quite well on David Clifford, but Clifford, because he's so good, still ends up with 5 points for play, which is amazing. But that is the difference. Dublin have been comfortable and expect their defenders to play man-to-man and have been doing that for 5 or 6 years. They're not going to play defensive forwards and try and bring guys back. And ultimately, Kerry, I think, know that that's the style they need to play to beat Dublin. But are their defenders? I know they're missing Thomas Sullivan from the full back line today. That's going to be the challenge. And ultimately, if Kerry are going to win the All-Ireland, they're probably going to have to beat Dublin along the way, and they're going to need to be able to tie up Conor O'Callaghan, Kieran Kilkenny, Cormac Costello, Dean Rock to come back. That's always the question mark over Kerry.
What's the Paddy Andrews breakdown of the penalty taking today?
Well, he's had enough practice. Cormac Costello to be 4 penalties in 2 weeks. It was a great strike, but it was a really important one as well. Like Kerry had got it back level. Dublin were kind of feeling the pressure, and it was a big spot kick, well won by Conor O'Callaghan, but Cormac, to be fair to him, rifled to the roof of the net with the pressure on. It was a really good kick. And the same for David Clifford. I mean, 73rd minute, he knows that that's the chance. Kerry were probably struggling to create a goal chance outside of that, but the two guys, they showed their mettle, really. High pressure kicks, and to be fair, 2 of the top forwards in the game, so 2 great finishes.
A couple of personnel questions on the Dublin front. First of all, how did Comerford do in your opinion today?
I thought he was really good. Like I said, he was put under big pressure in the second half particularly, but again, if you're playing in goal for Dublin, that is, you're going to have to deal with that. Stephen Cluxton has obviously been the standard bearer, is not playing in the National League at the minute, so Evan, it seems like the natural progression from that, and to be fair, I thought he was really good today, like I say, in the face of some pretty high pressure in the second half, particularly from Kerry. But I thought interesting in the first half as well, when Kerry did try and push up on Evan, he did actually get a couple of balls over the Kerry press into Brian Fenton and Niall Scully as well. So look, he has loads of talent, and it's great for him to start getting a couple of more game times, because obviously Stephen can't go on forever. But I thought he was quite good today, yeah.
And then what about Lahif? Is he edging towards being the partner for Fenton in midfield?
It's hard to know. That is, like I say, the Dublin team, you can probably name 12 or 13 of their starters straight off the bat. There is a gap for someone to play midfield with Brian Fenton, particularly with Michael Darran McCauley stepping away. It's James McCarthy has gone in there and played in the past. James is probably more comfortable himself playing in the half back line as well. There does seem to be a spot beside Fenton, and ultimately that's, you want Brian Fenton if you're Dublin marauding forward. He's scoring 3-4 points a game. Whoever plays in that role beside him is going to be more of a defensive style of player. I thought Tom did quite well today, but I do think that it's probably a position that's up for grabs, and Dublin are trying out 2 or 3 different midfielders. I know they have new players in the squad as well, but that's definitely an area where Dublin are probably looking for someone to put their hand up and say, I'm going to be Brian Fenton's partner, let him off, and I suppose do the fancier stuff. Well, you're going to be in there grafting and trying to give Dublin a platform.
It's interesting from Kerry's perspective that part of their uptick happened after they took Paul Gainey and David Moran off. I know they were going well before that, in fairness. They looked absolutely shattered. Paul Gainey came off just in front of us. He looked completely spent. Like, is there a stage in a man's career where things need to change a little bit once you get into the 30s? I know Paul Gainey was out at the start of the season saying that he's not at that stage yet where people need to talk about the end, but they were absolutely knackered out there. They did see him coming off. Yeah,
well, I'm 32 now, and I knew well myself that my time had come to an end. But look, I think if you're playing Dublin, the speed, the athleticism they have, you need to be able to get around the pitch. It's no coincidence. Once Kerry brought in a little bit more energy and a little bit more speed and a little bit more fight up front, that helped turn the tide for him. David Moran's a brilliant player, but he's probably not the most athletic for midfield, so no more so than Fenton with Dublin. David Moran, if he's going to play midfield, he needs to have someone who is really athletic to get up and down the pitch at midfield. Paul Gainey, to be fair, he's probably struggling for form the last kind of 18 months or so. I don't think putting him out at wing forward is going to help him return to form. He is not naturally a wing forward, particularly in today's game. Paul Gainey on form is one of the most lethal finishers in the country, playing on the edge of the square. I think to try and ask him to get back to form, playing in a position which is just not really natural to him, I think it's going to be hard for Paul Gainey out there. I think Kerry, if they want to get the best out of him, should probably try and play him inside. But yeah, the 2 guys coming off, it's hard playing against this Dublin team, particularly around the middle third, and you could probably see that when they come off around 45 minutes, you know. Yeah, absolutely. Last question then, Paddy, what was it like being back at a game where you're not playing, actually having that little bit of a blue heart, I'd imagine, thumping as things were getting tight at the end? Yeah, no, look, it was delighted. My first game of the year that I've been able to get to. I know, geez, it would have been amazing to have some sort of supporters here as well from both counties, because it was such an exciting game. But look, it's different, but for me, no more so than, I suppose, seeing David Moran and Paul Gainey coming off and seeing how knackered they were. I know that feeling very well. So look, I'm happy I made the right call. It was time for me to move on, and I think that's the exciting thing for Dublin as well. Myself, Michael Darran McCauley, a couple of guys that have been there for a long time have moved on. Paul Mannion, obviously, but you see someone like Paddy Small really starting to put his hand up, scored 3 points today. Darragh Mullen coming on again, the forward line. That's been, I suppose, the beauty of Dublin's success. As older players start to move on, new guys are just coming through, and to be able to have that consistent success as some of Dublin's key players over the years have retired, that's been such a key part of their success, that strength and depth.
Great stuff today, Paddy.
No worries, thanks a million.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward.